Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto was trained by Wolf Clan. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by big link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. The First Change and Revelations. It was a dark night in Konoha as a crescent moon glowed above the rooftops on this starless night. On this night a 14-year-old boy was walking home from a day at the academy and an evening of practice with his favorite senseis. The boy was slightly short for his age and skinny, he had bright sun-kissed blonde hair, bright cerulean blue eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light, and 3 whisker-like markings on each cheek. This boy was none other than one Naruto Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune and, unknown to him, last of the wolf-blooded. Naruto was in a good mood this night, which was a rarity recently. Normally the blonde was always in a good mood no matter what happened to him, but recently he had been feeling odd. His temper had grown much shorter, he was constantly irritated, and he could swear all his senses were going crazy. When he had tried to ask Iruka-sensei about these changes, he had to sit through the dreaded birds and bees talk about shutter puberty. This had thrown Naruto for a loop. I mean, does everyone start noticing people more by their scent than looks? And what about those odd shadows he constantly sees out of the corner of his eye? However, Naruto pushed these troublesome thoughts aside until later, he was in a good mood and he would be damned if his hormones were going to get in the way of it. Why was he in a good mood you ask? Because, tomorrow was the Genin exams and he was sure he was going to pass thanks to Iruka-sensei and the others helping tutor him over the last year since he had failed his first attempt last year. Though he still acted like the same knucklehead in class he had grown immensely in the last year. He was glad that he had told the old Hokage about why he hadn't passed last year. When he had been brought to the Hokage's office to talk about his recent failure at the exams and had explained to his surrogate grandfather about how the teachers always refused to answer his questions or sent him out of the room for no reason, the old man had been infuriated. He had called for a full investigation into the academy and assigned the boy 3 private tutors to help the boy catch up after years of being sabotaged. A few moments later 2 men and a woman entered the office. One was an odd man with a bowl-cut hairdo, giant eyebrows, and a green spandex bodysuit. The woman was wearing a short skirt, an over-large trench coat, and had purple hair, golden eyes and proportions that made the teenage ninja's head feel light, and the last had a pineapple-shaped haircut and a large scar across his nose. The last one Naruto recognized as his favorite academy teacher because the man had actually attempted to help Naruto, Yamino Iruka, and the former 2 was introduced as one Mito guy, a top jonin in the field of Taijutsu, and Anko Mitarashi, a Takebetsu jonin, specializing in ninjutsu, weapons and torture. After Saratobi had explained the reason why Naruto had failed, all 3 became extremely irritated. Guy began spouting about extremely unyouthful behavior, and Iruka and Anko developed deep scowls. After the explanation Saratobi requested all 3 help tutor the boy. Both men happily agreed and the woman gave a curt nod. Then Naruto's life became a whole lot more interesting. Granted all 3 were difficult trainers, but Naruto excelled under both. Under Guy-sensei he learned a great deal about Taijutsu and helped increase his physical conditioning. He and the odd man had become quite close over the year, and when Guy had told Naruto that he would be taking on a Genin squad this year and that he was personally requesting Naruto and his 2 friends Lee and Tenten for his team, Naruto had been ecstatic. He and Lee had become great friends since Guy had introduced the 2 earlier in the year, since both were constantly underestimated. Guy had compared the 2 saying that they were both geniuses of hard work, and that statement had cemented the 2 into a strong friendship-friendly rivalry. Tenten had become friends with him after he had stood up to a group of their fellow classmates who were insulting her hair buns. Though he constantly joked with her about them, calling her Mousy-chan, she always blushed since Naruto had described them as really cute. The 3 had become close friends over the year and Naruto couldn't wait to graduate with them. Anko-sensei had, at first, scared the living daylights out of the young blonde, but over time the 2 began to get to know one another and found that they had both been treated as outcasts by the villagers, though Naruto still didn't know why he was treated so poorly. After Anko had told him about how her former sensei had betrayed her and how she was treated because of her sensei betraying the leaf, the 2 had become as close as could be. Anko's training had greatly improved not only Naruto's weapon use and jutsu skills, but also his stealth and tracking skills, and he had even learned the basics of sealing. Anko had even found the problem with his clone technique. Due to his unusually high chakra reserves and relatively low chakra control, Naruto simply overpowered his clones so they couldn't work. She had taught him, with the Hokage's permission, the shadow clone technique that solved that little problem. She had also tested Naruto's elemental affinities and had been shocked to find that the boy had not 1 or 2 but 3 affinities for lightning, water, and wind. After finding this out she taught the blonde a few basic jutsu from each element. Lastly, Iruka-sensei's training helped increase Naruto's knowledge in everything from history to science and chemistry, which surprising Naruto found very useful in his pranking, including a new stink bomb recipe to ninja facts and information. He had also helped Naruto's chakra control which, while still not good enough to match his supply, grew to an acceptable level by teaching him the leaf and kunai balancing techniques. During their time together the already strong bond between the two had grown greater still, into a bond like that between a younger and older brother. Yes, all in all Naruto was having a great year. He was quickly growing into a proper ninja both physically, thanks in no small parts to Guy's training, dietary adjustments, and youth shakes, which were actually quite tasty to the blonde, and mentally. He would be able to pass the test easily, now that Mizuki team couldn't interfere with his test again. He would be on a great team with his strong, though admittedly odd, sensei and his two dearest friends. Sure both his friends were a year older than him, but that didn't matter to Naruto. Yup, life was good for the young Uzumaki until slam. Naruto found himself thrown across the street into a nearby alley by a tackle. As he regained his footing his body instantly went into an iron fist stance as Guy-sensei had taught him and faced the three men that attacked him. As Naruto examined his attackers he instantly recognized all three. They were three of the academy teachers that had been removed from their posts half a year ago after the Hokage had uncovered not only their interference with his training but also taking bribes in order to aid certain students along. The one in the center Naruto recognized quickest of all, it was none other than Mizuki, his former teacher with Iruka-sensei, and one of the most adamant Naruto haters in the academy. The man had gone so far as to sabotage Naruto's tests in order to ensure his failure. After the information came to light Mizuki and half a dozen other teachers had been put on a permanent suspension of duty without pay. What the hell do you and your little friends want Mizuki team? Naruto snarled at his former instructor. Payback monster, spat on of the former teachers, payback for losing us our jobs, ruining our careers, and stealing our futures away from us. Ha! Barked Naruto. You threw those away yourselves when you accepted bribes and sabotaged an innocent student's training. Innocent? You? Don't be absurd. This village should be thanking us for ensuring that the demon remained weak, spat the other instructor. He then grew a cruel sneer, and they'll praise us as heroes once we eliminate you once and for all. What is with everyone calling me a demon? I just don't get what you pea-brains are thinking. Naruto snorted in an annoyed fashion, a bored tone in his voice. He may not be able to beat three Chunin in a fight, he wasn't that good yet, but he could at least hold them off until help arrived. The two other instructors sneered at Naruto's remark and tone, but Mizuki developed a sinister smirk on his face. Naruto, his voice filled with mock sincerity and kindness, would you like to know why the entire village hates you? Why they insult, degrade, and attack you? Why they will never accept you? What are you yapping about now Mizuki team? Naruto growled at the man, though his eyes widened as he heard Mizuki speak. Mizuki, are you sure about this? Questioned one of the other Chunin instructors. Telling him could get us all executed. Silence fool. I know just what I'm doing. Snapped Mizuki before returning his attention to Naruto. You see Naruto, do you remember the story of how the fourth killed the Kyuubi and saved the village? At Naruto's nod Mizuki continued, his voice growing louder and more deranged as he continued. Well, you see, that's a lie. The fourth couldn't kill it, so he sealed the Kyuubi into a newborn baby, and the third made a law, so no one could tell the younger generation about it. You are that baby Naruto. You are the nine-tailed demon fox. Now die Kyuubi. As Mizuki nearly shrieked the last part as he and the other former instructors leapt at Naruto to kill the boy. As Mizuki finished his rant Naruto's eyes widened. It all made sense now. The attacks, the constant whispered insults of fox brat, demon child, and monster, the attempts to hurt or hinder him in every way, shape or form, they all made sense now. As the information sank in, a number of different emotions sank into the young boy's heart. First came sadness, then despair, then anger and finally accumulating into a fierce rage. It's not fair Naruto mentally screamed. I never asked for this to happen to me. I never asked to contain the Kyuubi. I never wanted to hold it. I never deserved the glares and insults and attacks. It's not fair. It's not fair. The final part came as a part scream part roar that caused the Chunin to stop before they even reached the boy. After his release Naruto started to feel pain coursing through his body, not like that of the previous beatings he'd endured, but something new. It felt like his body was melting from the inside and reshaping itself. He also started to feel something besides the pain, power and excitement, as if a lifetime's worth of adrenaline had been pumped into his body. His senses also changed, the increases he'd been feeling come and go for nearly a year and now had finally settled in and then intensified. His vision began to flash between normal and a bizarre twisted version of the area surrounding him, filled with strange being, which seemed to glance toward the boy in confusion before returning to their business. Naruto finally collapsed to his knees as the shock and strain of this change became too much for him to handle, and he howled like a wolf to the heavens above. During this, the three Chunin stood in shock of the boy's outburst. They watched as the boy's body started to shift and change. His hair grew longer and thicker across his body 1 second only to recede another, or cover one area, only to recede and cover another, until at last his body was covered in light brown fur, with dark golden blonde streaks throughout the head and back. The boy's nails changed into fierce claws and his teeth sharpened into knife-like fangs, and his face lengthened into a wolfish snout. His muscles expanded, and he grew until the former 5'3" blonde stood 7'9". Lastly were his eyes. They retained their bright cerulean color, but an equally bright yellow sheen seemed to overcast them. Mizuki screamed, "The demon has taken control. Kill it now." As the two other Chunin leapt at him, Naruto's clawed hands shot out. One pierced one of the foolish Chunin in the shoulder, and the other ripped through the other man's gut, killing him as he watched his own inside spill onto the pavement below. The, now wounded, other Chunin attempted to slash the former blonde's chest with a kunai and struck home. A shout of victory died in his throat as the wound healed in an instant, fur and skin replacing the formerly deep cut. The man didn't even have time to scream as the newly changed werewolf grabbed the man's head in both clawed hands and with a sharp jerk, a twist, and a sharp crack, broke the man's spine and killed the man in an instant. Mizuki, seeing both of his comrades die in an instant after attacking the former blonde, did the first smart thing in his life. He ran away as fast as his legs could carry him. In the distance as he fled, the only thing Mizuki could hear outside his own heartbeat was a howl that seemed to fill the night. If Mizuki had looked up, he would have sworn that the moon shimmered for a second, like it was laughing. After releasing a final howl of victory, Naruto slowly reverted to his normal form and collapsed, his clothes shredded after the transformation, to the street below. Mere moments later, the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, arrived on the scene, a squad of Anbu at his side. After hearing the howl, he and all the nearby Anbu ninja had come to find out what had happened. After he saw the remains of the two former Chunin instructors, his eyes fell on Naruto and his shredded appearance. Cat. Dog. Bear. He shouted instantly. 3 Anbu in the respective animal masks appeared in front of the old cage. Get Naruto to the hospital immediately. Make sure whatever did this didn't hurt the boy. As the 3 Anbu bowed and Bear picked up the young blonde, the Hokage had only one thought in his mind. What the hell happened here? Drip drip drip. Naruto was lying on his stomach, body aching over every single inch. Drip drip drip. Naruto began to stir awake. Drip drip drip. Damn it, I'm going to have to fix that damn faucet again. Naruto's still addled mind thought with a grimace. Drip drip drip. Wait a minute. How did I get home? Last thing I remember, I was attacked by Mizuki team and those other prick teachers. Then Mizuki team told me I was the Kyuubi. Then I got angrier than I ever thought I could be. Then Fang's claws fur. Naruto thought, confused. As the memories of last night came flooding back to him, he remembered. His transformation, his vision of the strange world, the power he had felt as his body had reshaped himself, and the way he had killed those other 2 teachers. What the hell happened to me? Was Naruto's mental scream as his eyes shot open. As Naruto hastily got up off his stomach and began to look around, his first thought was, how did I get in a sewer? The place Naruto now found himself could only be described as a giant sewer if not for a few oddities. First, was the sheer size of the place. The Hokage tower couldn't even reach the roof of it, and it seemed to stretch on for miles. Second, were the pipes that covered the sides of the tunnel. Normally this wouldn't be that odd, but these pipes glowed in a number of different colors, nearly half in a bright incandescent blue, a few less in a ghostly silver, and the remaining few a bright vicious red. Lastly was the fact that the entire place was filled with a weird red light, the color mimicking the pipes only a few shades darker, with no visual source for it at all. As Naruto considered his strange new surroundings, he heard a strange sibilant whisper, Come, young Uratha. We have much to speak of. You, I, and another have much to discuss." As Naruto heard the voice, and he felt compelled to follow it as his mind began to swim with the memories of his transformation. It had felt weird but, at the exact same time, felt so very right. It was like he had been living in a shell his entire life and, in the moment of the transformation, he had finally been set free. It was exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. His mind then went to the 2 Chunin he had killed. At first he suddenly felt sickened and saddened that he had taken not 1 but 2 lives, but these emotions soon passed as he remembered the sneers on both of the men's faces as they had attacked and attempted to kill him. It was like Iruka-sensei had taught him, a ninja's life is one of danger and strife. You must be ready to kill in order to survive. Just remember, killing doesn't make you a monster. Only when you enjoy murder are you truly a monster. Naruto remembered the speech with a smile. Maybe Iruka had told him that for a day like today. He didn't enjoy the fact that he had killed those 2, bastards though they were, but he did not regret it for saving his life. As Naruto's thoughts ended, he found himself outside a giant gate that seemed to reach high into the tunnel, beyond the shadows that blocked the roof from sight. The gate was wrapped in chains that all seemed to connect to a single paper seal. As Naruto leaned in to study the seal above his head, a pair of blood-red eyes, as big as the young man stood tall, suddenly snapped open and stared at Blonde. Naruto instinctively jumped back as he heard the same whispery voice, now greatly magnified into a tremendous roar, spoke, "Greetings, young Uratha. Do you know who I am?" As the words were spoken, a giant fox head with blood-red fur appeared out of the shadows of the gate. Naruto's eyes widened in fear and recognition before narrowing in rage. "Yeah, I do," he shouted. "You're the reason I've been hated my whole life. You're the Kyuubi." The Kyuubi's eyes widened in shock. "Pup isn't nearly as dense as most think," Kyuubi thought before its eyes softened into a tearful look as it remembered the abuse the child has suffered because of it. The voice had softened as the fox spoke again, "You are correct. For what it is worth, I'm deeply sorry for the pain that my imprisonment meant has caused you. I truly am." The fox finished with soft sob nearly hidden in its voice. Naruto's eyes widened at the sorrow he felt and saw in the so-called King of Demons' voice and eyes. An idea suddenly hit Naruto. "You never wanted to attack Konoha, did you?" It was more a statement than a question. "No," the Kyuubi stated, "I was placed under a powerful genjutsu that threw me into a deep rage by a man with unusual red eyes and a man who smelled of snakes." The Kyuubi sobbed out and then looked at Naruto with a curious look in its large, sad eyes, then asked, "How did you know?" Naruto shrugged, "I just could feel it. Must be because we're linked through the seal. By the way, where are we, Kyuubi? I thought Mizuki team said you were sealed inside me." "We're inside your mind, young Uratha," the Kyuubi stated. "Great, just what I need. My mind is literally a sewer," Naruto stated with an exaggerated sigh and slump of his shoulders, causing the Kyuubi to snicker. A thought suddenly hit the young blonde. "Hey, why do you keep calling me that weird word? What the hell is in Uratha?" Naruto questioned. "I believe I should explain this question, young Kitsune," stated a new voice. The new voice was strong and matronly, like a stern grandmother or the mistress of a powerful estate. "As you wish," Kyuubi said with a bow of its head. "Good, but first I need to introduce myself," the voice stated as a new figure appeared out of the shadow. She was a tall, matronly woman with pale but weathered skin. Her hair glowed like liquid moonlight as she looked down on the boy with silver. She wore robes that seemed to be woven out of pure silver and white gold, with images of the moon in its different stages woven across it in a darker shade of silver. She then spoke to the young blonde, "Greetings, young Uratha. I have gone by many names in my time. This nation's people have called me Tsukiyomi, but I prefer the names your people gave me many years ago, Lunar Mother Moon." "Your goddess?" Naruto asked, awestruck by the appearance of the powerful figure. Luna smiled down on the young blonde, "You are both correct and incorrect at the same time. While I am actually referred to as a goddess by many cultures, I am, like the Kyuubi here, actually a spirit. Admittedly, I am one of the most powerful ones, but a spirit nonetheless. The same is true for the Shinigami and a good deal of other gods in your myths. However, I believe we are losing focus here. You wish to know what in Uratha is correct? Oh right, sorry," Naruto apologized while rubbing the back of his head, embarrassed by his loss of focus. "It's quite alright," Luna stated before clearing her throat. "The name Uratha is linked to an ancient story. Once eons ago the world was united into a single state called Pangaea. The physical world and the shadow realm stood united without any barriers between." Sorry to interrupt, but what is this shadow realm you just talked about?" Naruto asked. "The shadow realm is the world of spirits and their kind. It is a reflection of this world both physically and metaphysically, and before you ask," Kyuubi explained, "that means that the shadow realm is shaped by both a place's physical features and the emotions that surround and fill that region. In other words, an ugly place filled with positive emotions and memories will seem brighter and more cheerful, and a beautiful place filled with negative emotions and memories will seem darker and more dangerous or sad." "Now please do not interrupt Luna-sama again. Thank you, Kyuubi." Now, as I was saying, Pangaea was a paradise protected and policed by one of the mightiest of all the spirits, Father Wolf. As time passed on and Father Wolf aged, he brought forth children from himself to keep the world in balance. These children were part spirit and part mortal. They were the first Uratha. Naruto's eyes widened at this statement, but he kept quiet until the end. As Luna continued, these children aided Father Wolf for centuries, but as the ancient spirit grew old and began to feel the pain of his countless battles, the young Uratha took it upon themselves to end their ancestral father's pain. In a single action they ended their father's life in a final moment of glory, but their actions had dire consequences. In his final moment, Father Wolf let loose a single howl that shattered the bonds of the world and split it into the current physical world and the shadow realm. In their guilt over the consequences of their actions, swore an oath to protect the balance of the world. I, being one of Father Wolf's oldest lovers and friends, took pity on the young Uratha and took them under my protection. After many millennia of acting as stewards of the world in shadow, an event occurred that wiped out all the Uratha, or so I believed, in a matter of years. This event, known as the Great Human-Demon War, shattered the barrier between the worlds almost completely, and now spirits may pass into the world without much effort. It also unlocked an ability long dormant in humanity, the ability to use, as your people call it, chakra. This has allowed humanity to defend itself against the dangers of the shadow, and has allowed a new balance to take the place of the old. As Luna finished, she turned her gaze to Naruto and spoke in a calm manner. Now you, young Uratha, have a choice. I have decided to grant you the powers of your ancestors now that you have experienced the first change, and even turn it into what your people now call a Kekai Genkai, or bloodline. However, there is a cost. You and all your descendants must do as your ancestors did, and swear the ancient oath of the moon to me as your ancestors did many years ago. Naruto's eyes were the size of dinner plates as Luna finished her story. As all that she had said sank in, he asked her a question. What does the oath of the moon entail, if I may ask? Luna don't know. Luna looked at him and smiled. The oath is very simple. She stated calmly. All you must do is vow on your name and spirit that you will follow 7 oaths. First, Uram.Akis, the wolf must hunt. This means that you and your descendants must do all that they are able to crush any of the ancient evils that infest the physical world and the shadow. This doesn't mean all your clan must be warriors, but merely cannot aid these evils and do what they can to stop them. Second, Imru nu fur Imru, the people do not murder the people. This means that your clan must never slay a member of its own without just cause. Third, Sisi Mak, Makna Si, the low honor the high respect the low. This means you must show respect and honor to those that have earned it and must return respect that is given to you by those below you. Basically, you can't develop a superiority complex like some other bloodlines. And Kofuchahakofugakov. Fourth, Nide respect your prey. This rule means as long as you hunt you will show your prey the respect all creatures deserve after death. Fifth, Uratha se fulfill Lu, the Uratha shall cleave to the human. Basically this means you will not mate with other Uratha or wolves, though spirits in human form are allowed. Luna added the last part while sending a wink to Kyuubi, who blushed. Kyuubi's sudden blush caused a reaction with Naruto, and he shouted, Kyuubi, you're a girl, why didn't you mention that earlier? Hehehe. Must have slipped my mind. The Kyuubi stated with a snicker, and in a sudden flash of red she was gone. In the Kyuubi's place stood a beautiful young woman in her late teens, with fiery red hair and blood-red eyes. She was dressed in only a crimson kimono decorated with fox images in deep black and gold. She had a heart-shaped face, at least C maybe D cup breasts, and legs that didn't stop. Atop her head stood a pair of fox ears, and 9 long crimson tails flowed behind her. To put it simply, she was drop-dead gorgeous. She winked at Naruto and said, so, how do you like my human form, Naruto-kun? As Naruto blushed and mumbled pretty, Luna grinned before saying sternly, now that your flirtatious moment is over, do you mind if I continue my explanation, Kyuubi? Of course, forgive our interruption, Luna-sama, said Kyuubi with a sorry Luna-sama from Naruto. Luna nodded and continued, the 6th oath states. Nu hu yuzuir and do not eat the flesh of man or wolf. This rule is pretty self-explanatory. The last rule formerly forced you to keep your power hidden from normal mortals to prevent an effect called lunacy that affected those who see you in your altered state, but with humans developing chakra they have become immune to it. Even the fact I shall create a new oath. See tum nada ijeth, honor your word and the vows you swear on the moon. This means you must always do your best to keep your promises and honor your vows made under my name. This can be overruled if you are deceived when you make the vow. Each broken oath will bring a severe punishment upon the oath breaker. As Luna finished her speech she looked at Naruto and waited for his answer. Naruto appeared to think for a moment and decided that most of the rules were common sense stuff for him. He then said, I, Naruto Uzumaki, take upon the oath of the moon and swear upon my name and spirit to honor it for all of my days. He stated while bowing to Luna, who nodded sagely. Very good, Naruto-kun, stated the ancient moon spirit with a small smile on her face. Now I will explain to you about the power you have now inherited. The basic powers include increased senses, the ability to communicate with wolves and other canines, and increased regeneration, but you should be warned these gifts come at a price. Silver now burns your skin like fire and poison and cancels your regeneration. The more advanced powers are your auspice forms and the ability to wield essence to fuel spirit charms. The first power is the power of the auspice. This power varies depending on the phase of the moon during your first change. First are the children of the full moon, the Rahu, and their auspice is called the warrior's eye. They are warriors first and foremost, and their auspice allows them to take the measure of a foe, gaining knowledge on their strength and abilities. By merely looking at a foe they can tell if the person is stronger or weaker than them and the difference in their abilities. Next are the children of the gibbous moon, the Cahalith, and their auspice is called prophetic dreams. They are the planners and strategists of the Uratha, and their power allows them to gain brief insight into the future. All they must do is meditate upon a problem and fall into a deep sleep, and they can gain a prophetic dream that will give them new insight into whatever problem they were meditating upon. Sometimes, if a great threat is coming they will receive visions even without the meditations. The third auspice is the children of the half-moon, the Elidith, and their auspice spirit envoy. They are diplomats and negotiators before being warriors, and their auspice increases their natural ability to negotiate with spirits. Next are the children of the new moon, the Araka, and their gift is the Pathfinder's sense. They were the scouts, spies and assassins of the Uratha, and their auspice allowed them to sense when spirit influence was involved in matters better than most Uratha. Lastly is your auspice young Uratha. The children of the crescent moons, the Ithir auspice was called Ritual Master. All Uratha are allowed to perform powerful rituals that grant them numerous abilities, but the Ithir were true masters of that craft using and learning them with greater ease. This auspice probably also increased your intellect a little after awakening. Naruto nodded as he thought of his own auspice, and, though he would have preferred being born under Rahura Araka, the ability of the Ithir sounded extremely interesting. He'd have to ask about these rituals later, but first he had to let Luna finish her explanation. Next is the power of your forms. The first form is called Hishu the man. This is your default form, the one you were born with, although when you awaken you might find that the change has caused some slight improvements. Next is Dalur the near man. In this form you remain humanoid, but gain a bestial aspect, with your normal and body hair growing thicker and longer, nails and teeth sharpening, and body growing and gaining some extra muscle. This form offers a slight increase in strength, stamina, size, speed, and sensory abilities. It is best for when you want to gain some power while keeping a degree of subtlety. Third is Goru the beast or wolf man. This is the form you assumed when you were attacked earlier. It is a blend of both human and beast, and is best used for raw power. It offers full fangs and claws as weapons, massive increases in strength, stamina, speed, size, and sensory abilities, minor boosts in your agility and reflexes, and a thickening of the skin granting a thin form of armor. Next is the Urshul or the war beast. This form resembles a gargantuan wolf easily twice or triple the size of a normal wolf. It is the fastest form and has exceptional sensory boost, so it is best used for high-speed combat, hunting, or for escapes. In addition to a massive increase in speed and perceptive abilities, this form also provides a large boost in strength, agility, stamina, and reflexes, and a slight increase in size. The last is the Urhin or beast form. In this form you appear as a normal wolf. Combat-wise it is not an effective form compared to the Urshul form, since it reduces your size, but it is very quick and has the best senses of the five, so it is best used for tracking. In addition to the sensory and speed boosts, it also provides a major increase in agility and reflexes, and a minor increase in stamina. To change your form you need to only concentrate on the form you wish to assume, and allow the change to occur. Naruto was extremely excited about this ability, and he couldn't wait to test the abilities of each of his forms to see what they could do. The final ability is the ability to wield essence and use spirit charms. First, essence is the power of the shadow realm, and it is similar to the chakra that you ninja use to create your jutsu. The key difference is that while ninja use hand signs to mold chakra into jutsu, spirits focus essence through imagery to create the effects of charms. Most spirits are linked to charms that comply with their nature, like a fire spirit could only use charms related to fire, but Uratha are different and can use nearly any type of charm if it was taught to them. To learn a charm you will have to complete a task or challenge assigned to you by a spirit. It may be difficult since a great deal of the spirit world views the Uratha as meddlers, but I'm sure you'll find a way. Different charms are rated at levels 1 to 5, and you won't be able to learn any higher level charms until you grow stronger. Currently the best you could wield would be a LVL1 or maybe LVL2 charm. An important note is that you do not regain essence as quickly as you do chakra. It could take weeks to restore your essence pool through meditation and rest alone, but there is a way to regain it faster. All you need is a locus, a sort of essence spring, and meditate nearby, and you will regain essence rapidly and fully restore it within an hour. Naruto nodded. These charms sounded just as amazing as jutsu, and since only he could use them that was even better. Finding one of these loci may be difficult, but he was sure he could do it. Now I believe that ends our little discussion, but before I leave Naruto I have a few things to give you. Stated Luna as she examined the boy. First I'd like to present you with a few charms. They are Two World Eyes, Wolfblood's Lure, Partial Change, and Soundless Strike1. As she finished she touched Naruto's head and, in a flash of silver, the knowledge of the charms was imprinted into his mind. The first is a power of your auspice domain, so only Ithir can use it. The next two are gifts directly from both Father Wolf and myself respectively, and the last is called a lunar front charm, a charm derived from one of the moon's aspects, in this case the stalker aspect. Luna explained. The next gift will be waiting in your home after you awaken. Lastly, I have some advice for you. The 5 wolf brothers will seek you out. Respect them and offer all 5 the honor of your clan in the future, and you will gain strong allies and teachers. That is all I have to teach you. Farewell young Uratha, but worry not. I have forgotten my adopted children for too long, and I will not do so again. Luna stated cryptically as she prepared to leave. Before you leave Luna-sama, I have a request for Naruto-kun and would like Luna-sama to oversee it. Kyuubi stated quickly before the moon spirit could leave. What is it, Kyuubi-chan? Naruto asked her curiously. Luna merely looked at the fox spirit with a slightly raised eyebrow. I would like to become Naruto-kun's personal totem spirit, stated the Kyuubi. Luna nodded and Naruto looked confused. What's a totem spirit? Questioned the young blonde. The totem spirit Naruto is a spirit who, in exchange for a price, grants an Uratha certain powers and abilities. Luna answered the blonde. My benefits for you Naruto-kun would be granting you a few of the spirit charms I know, acting as your advisor throughout your career and life, and granting you access to my chakra. As for my price, I have two conditions. First, I am allowed to experience your senses as long as we're joined. Second, if you find a way to free me, without killing or harming either of us, I request that you do. Explained the Kyuubi looking at the blonde with hope-filled eyes. Naruto merely smiled at the fox spirit. Kyu-chan, he grinned at her, I would have done those things for you, even if you didn't offer this totem thing. I know you weren't in control when you attacked Konoha so you don't deserve punishment for it. Naruto stated simply. Thank you Naru-kun. Sniffed the Kyuubi with a warm and happy look in her eyes. So how do we do this? Asked our blonde were-ninja. Remove a quarter of the seal and I'll do the rest. Stated the Kyuubi. As Naruto complied, red chakra suddenly surged around them both and she felt the link between them grow stronger. After he was done the fox placed one of her tails on the blonde's forehead and gave him the call element, feet of mist, and speak with beasts one spirit gifts. After that she let the young ninja drift off and leave his mindscape with a whispered, I look forward to working with you Naru-kun. As Naruto began to awaken yet again, he took in his surroundings before even opening his eyes. With his newly enhanced senses he could smell the familiar stink of disinfectant, medicine, and death, and he could hear the soft beeping of different machines surrounding him. Great, just great. I'm in the hospital. I hate the hospital. The blonde mentally groaned. Then the blonde noticed a familiar scent by his bed and he released a small growl. Just the person I need to have a long talk with. The blonde thought angrily. Hello Ijiji, stated the blonde as he opened his eyes and looked at the old cage, we have some stuff we need to talk about. The Hokage's head jerked up suddenly, startled by the blonde's sudden awakening, as well as the boy's cold tone. As Sarutobi looked at his surrogate grandson and noticed the cold look the blonde was giving him he stated, that we do Naruto. That we most certainly do. Normally I'd explain each gift after it is given, but since there are so many bunched together, I decided to wait to the end to give an explanation of each. So here are the gifts. To World I. Level 1 Gift of the Crescent Moon Gift Tree. Gift trees will be explained in either chapter 2 or 3. Through focusing the mind and concentrating on images of both worlds overlapping, the wielder of the wielder can see through the gauntlet that separates the two worlds and look either into the gauntlet's corresponding location in the shadow realm if used in the physical world or physical world if used in the shadow. Usually only takes concentration to use but grants only sight. If essence is channeled along with it, the user can send his sense of either hearing or smell across the gauntlet as well. Wolfblood's Lure. Level 1 Gift of the Father Wolf Gift Tree. Constant effect. Usually dogs and other canines, except wolves, are afraid of the Uratha, but this charm alters the werewolf's pheromones and character to make him appear as one of the pack. This causes most canines to become extremely friendly toward the Uratha. Also affects other animals to a lesser extent. Partial change. Level 1 Gift of the Mother Luna Gift Tree. Allows the wielder to change only certain parts of his anatomy into another form while keeping the remainder in Hishu. Examples include Oren's nose to track without being noticed as a wolf, Goru's claws for an instant weapon without revealing true power, or Urshel's legs for a major speed boost. Usually takes a moment of concentration and envisioning the required limb without essence, but by channeling essence can cause the change to be instantaneous. Soundless Strike. Level 1 of the Stalker's Moon Gift Tree. By focusing his will and channeling his essence throughout his body while envisioning a starless and moonless night, the werewolf can silence all sound that takes place in a 100-yard radius of him for 30 seconds. Call Element. Level 1 of the Elemental Gift Tree. Through calming the mind and focusing on a certain element, the werewolf can create a small quantity of the given element in the palm of his hands. He could create a few cups of water, a small amount of fire, a small breeze of fresh clean air, a few handfuls of dirt, of a small charge of electricity. While the amounts are not enough to be highly useful in combat at this level, they provide useful utilitarian purposes. Water to quench thirst, fire to start larger flames, air to provide oxygen in a confined space, dirt to fill in areas, and electricity to charge a small machine. Speak with Beasts. Level 1 of the Nature Gift Tree. Constant effect. Though normally a werewolf can only understand the language of wolves and canines, this gift allows the Uratha to comprehend the languages of all living creatures. The Uratha can both understand them and speak to them, though understanding the meaning of the communication can be quite different in the cases of drastically different creatures like insects or fish. Feet of Mist. Level 1 of the Stealth Gift Tree. By channeling essence through his body and using images of Mr. Fogg, the user wipes away any scent that his body gives off, making tracking him by scent virtually impossible. Chapter 2. Explanations, Encounters, and Exploration. Naruto sat in his hospital bed, his eyes cold as he stared at the man he had thought of as a grandfather for many years. "How long was I out?" asked a blonde coldly as he slowly examined his now greatly changed body. When Luna-sama had mentioned that there would be some physical changes, she wasn't kidding. Thought the blonde as he studied himself. He had grown over half a foot from standing at a short 5'3" to a new whopping 5'11". What little bit of baby fat that guy's training hadn't removed had disappeared to be replaced with lean and wiry muscle. He was still skinny, but now instead of looking scrawny, he now looked lean like a greyhound. His physical features hadn't changed much, except that his teeth and nails were sharper, his features had gained a wilder or rugged look, and his hair had become thicker. "Yeah, but they are definitely an improvement," answered the Kyuubi through their newly established mental link. "About 2 weeks," the old Hokage stated solemnly. He was nervous about the sudden change that had overtaken his adopted grandson. The boy had never spoken so coldly to him and had never had such an icy glare in his eyes before. He needed to find out what had happened that night, but first he needed to get Naruto to open up. "I take it that means I failed again?" asked the blonde. When the Hokage only nodded, Naruto slammed his fists into the nightstand beside his bed, nearly cracking it in half. "Damn it," shouted the angered blonde, "I worked so hard, but I still can't catch a break," he shouted in frustration. Sarutobi was saddened to see his grandson in such a way. He knew how hard the boy had worked over the past year and how excited he was about being placed on a team with both his friends and one of the few adults he trusted. Truthfully, Sarutobi wanted the boy to remain back a year so he could make friends his own age, but the Hokage was still saddened by his grandson's state. "Naruto," he stated in a sad and comforting voice, "I'm sorry, I know how much it meant to you to be on Guy's team with your friends, but who knows, you may make even better ones this year, since you'll be in a class with kids your own age." The Hokage then reached out to place a comforting hand on the boy's should only to have the blonde knock it away. "Don't," he growled. This action merely added to the old man's shock and fear. "Naruto," he asked, "what happened that night? Why are you treating me like an enemy? Do you want to know what happened, Hokage-sama?" Naruto growled out the sama suffix, causing the old man to flinch. Naruto had never addressed him by his title without adding Jiji to the end. "Fine, I'll tell you what happened." Naruto then told the old Kage about what had happened 2 weeks ago. He explained how Mizuki and the other 2 teachers had attacked him and how Mizuki had told him about the Kyuubi. How he experienced the first change and killed the other 2 ex-teachers while Mizuki had fled. He explained his meeting with Luna, leaving out the parts involving the Kyuubi. He didn't trust the old man enough to talk about his relationship with her anymore. He explained the basics of his powers and how they were now a Kekkei Genkai. At the end of his explanation, Sarutobi was shocked. Naruto had learned about the Kyuubi, killed 2 ex-Chunin, met a goddess, and gained an extremely powerful Kekkei Genkai. His thoughts were interrupted by Naruto's cold voice. "So Hokage-sama, were you ever going to inform me about my little tenant?" asked Naruto with a cold glare leveled at the Hokage. The Hokage gulped at the ice in the young man's voice. "Naruto," the old man started, "I understand your feelings right now," but the old Hokage tried to explain only to be cut off by a bark of laughter from the blonde. "You understand? Ha. Do you understand what it's like to be constantly hated for a reason you don't even know? Do you understand how it feels to be constantly attacked and find only yourself to blame? Do you understand what it feels like to find that one of the few people you've ever truly trusted completely has been lying to you for your entire life? Do you understand any of that, old man?" Naruto finished with a roar. The old man stepped back at the sound of the pure hurt and anger in the young man's voice. "Naruto, I save it. If that's all your questions, Hokage-sama, I'd like to be left alone." Naruto interrupted in an emotionless voice. Sarutobi wanted to say more, to explain to the boy his reasons, but he knew, in his current state, Naruto wouldn't listen. Besides, he knew he had no excuse, so he merely nodded and turned to leave. As he was about to exit the door, he spoke softly, "Naruto, I know you probably hate me now, but I was only trying to protect you. I truly am sorry, my boy." Naruto heard him and responded in a soft voice. "I know, Hokage Jiji. I know, in your own foolish way, you were trying to protect me from the truth. That's the only reason I can't hate you now. I just can't trust you anymore." Naruto finished, shaking his head sadly. The Hokage only smiled and nodded as he left the boy's room and headed for his office, a determined look plastered across his weathered features. He had a lot of work to do if he was going to earn back his grandson's trust. Later that evening, the sun was setting as Naruto had just left the hospital, fully recovered and was heading home. As he walked, Naruto felt the glares of the villagers and heard the muttered insults, the same as any other day he had lived. However, this day was different for one reason. Naruto knew why they muttered and glared at him. Instead of feeling sad and lonely, the way he used to feel when he received this treatment, he began to feel hot anger course through his veins. These idiots can't tell the difference between an ancient fox spirit and a 15-year-old. Naruto growled in his mind. "Hey, who are you calling ancient?" demanded Kyuubi. Naruto mentally flinched. "Sorry Kyuubi-chan, forgot about the mental link, and you're not ancient, you're a beautiful mature vixen," apologized the were ninja, getting a blush from said vixen. As Naruto continued to speak with Kyuubi, his new and improved ears caught the sound of an incoming rock. Moving faster than most, though the blonde possible, thanks to his improved Uratha reflexes, Naruto caught the incoming projectile easily in one hand. Looking behind him, he caught sight of the thrower, a short, slightly pudgy man with pink hair that he immediately identified as a Haruno. The Haruno clan was a clan of merchants that ran a large number of the shops in the Hidden Leaf village, and all of which were the top offenders when it came to throwing Naruto out. He had heard that the clan head's daughter had joined the ninja academy in hopes of expanding the family's influence into the ninja circles. Naruto gripped a stone in his hand before cocking his hand back and returning the rock to its thrower, right onto his pudgy nose. With an audible crack, the stone connected, smashing the overweight merchant's nose. The crowd was shocked. They had all come to expect the demon to take their punishment with the same sorrowful looks or happy grin he always wore. How wrong the fools were. "Listen up, you bunch of moronic asswhips," snarled out the blonde. The crowd's focus was then riveted on Naruto. What was this creature which had replaced their submissive demon punching bag? This was the thought shared by the majority of the crowd. "I've been taking your abuse for most of my life, and I'm damn sick of it," the blonde growled. "I know about the fox and the reason you morons hate me." This caused many a gasp to fill the crowd, and I'd like to state this once and clearly. I'm not the fox. If I was, do you idiots honestly think I'd have let you get away with all the shit you've pulled on me? Silence filled the street. I didn't think so. Now I'm giving all of you this one warning, so spread it. The next idiots who try to fuck with me again will get the same treatment returned on them with double the force. You throw a rock at me, I'll throw it right back and break your skull. You try and beat me, I'll break your arms. You try and poison me, I'll stuff it back down your throats, finished the blonde. With his piece said, the blonde turned and left, heading for his apartment and leaving a gaping and murmuring crowd behind him. Nicely said, Naruto-kun, came Kyuubi's voice. I especially like the double the force part of the threat. Very alpha-like. Wasn't a threat. The blonde growled, I meant every word I said. I'm through being those bastards' punching bag. I've got pride now, and I don't intend to lose it. As well you should, the Kyuubi agreed. You're in Uratha, not to mention my container, you deserve your pride. Not to mention that kind of behavior impresses the females, myself included. Kyuubi finished with a lecherous grin, getting a blush from our favorite blonde werewolf. A few moments later, Naruto reached his apartment complex. It wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. It had 4 rooms. A main living room, a kitchen dining room, a bedroom, and a bathroom. It was relatively well kept, a few small bits of clutter laying around, but all in all the place seemed well kept with a homey, lived-in feel to it. The place used to come under constant attack by angry shinobi, hoping to get to the blonde by attacking his home. This stopped soon after, since the apartment complex was also home to a few jounin who were friendly to the boy and disliked seeing his home being attacked. After several gangs of pillaging villagers were found strung up, beaten, with a sign saying apartments are protected by more than their residents, that attacks on his home had stopped. As Naruto looked around his home, he noticed the lack of dust and thought that the Hokage must have sent someone to keep it clean while he was in the hospital. He remembered his discussion with old man earlier and felt a twinge of guilt for how he had treated the old man, but soon shook it off. The old man had made a big mistake in lying to him about Kyuubi, and he needed to understand that. Besides, Naruto thought with a grin, maybe this will get the old man to actually do something about the village. Hell knows he needs to do something. The Uchiha clan superiority complex alone is starting to cause problems. I wish more of them were like Itari ni. The thought of Itari Uchiha brought a smile to the blonde's lips. Itari had been one of his assigned guards when she was just made a jounin, and the two had bonded quite quickly. Itari hated the arrogance her clan had started to show and often spoke of her annoyance at her clan's actions. Her only friend from the clan was one Shisui Uchiha, and even he was starting to share his clan's attitude. As Naruto continued to scan his home to check for any intruders or traps, past events had led him to become suspicious of the apparent safety of his home. He noticed a box lying on the kitchen counter, directly under an open window, that seemed to be sheathed in moonlight. Naruto-kun, I believe that is the second part of Luna-sama's gift for you. It has her scent on it, and that sheath of moonlight is her personal mark. informed the Kyuubi. Naruto nodded and approached the box. It was large, a good 2 feet long and about 1.5 feet wide. It was made of a gray metal and the roof was hinged to open without coming completely off. On top of it was a note in a strange script that Naruto instinctively understood. Kyuubi Naruto question his totem, how is that I understand this strange language, since I've never seen it before. Kyuubi quickly responded, the language and script are called First Tongue, it's an ancient language used only by powerful spirits and the Uratha, and the reason you understand it is because Uratha have an innate ability to read and speak it. Kind of like a reflex language, your mind instinctively knows it. The fox spirit explained to her young charge. Naruto nodded, it made as much sense as everything else that had happened to him recently. Naruto picked up the box and moved it to the end table in the middle of the living room. As he picked up the note he read, Dear Naruto, inside this box are a few gifts to you. Consider them the legacy of the Uratha. Each is a unique fetish. Before you ask, fetishes are weapons and tools created by Uratha to aid them. They are ranked like charms and rites from levels 1 to 5 and are created by binding a defeated or willing spirit into a physical item, thereby altering its shape and giving it unique abilities. Creating fetishes is a ritual that nearly any Uratha rite master can do, but it requires training to create more powerful ones. Inside are 5 items with letters attached to them explaining their powers or uses. This box is also a fetish called the Ghost Keeper box. It is a box that only Uratha are capable of touching, and anyone else who attempts to touch or open it will only have their hands pass harmlessly through it. It is protected against most forms of detection without sight. These same properties are also associated with whatever is placed inside the box by an Uratha when the lid is closed. It is a useful item for keeping valuable items out of non-Uratha hands. Naruto nodded as he read and Kyuubi decided to put her 2 cents in, a useful item, you could use it for security purposes to keep items safe or for transportation purposes, to move items around without others being able to take them from you or even sense that you have them with you. She stated. Naruto could only nod his agreement as he opened the box and removed the first item. It appeared to be a wooden cylinder somewhere between 1 foot and 1.5 feet long, as wide as staff or spear hilt, and wrapped in deep black leather. At each end was a stylized wolf head designed with the mouth closed and clenched in a feral snarl. Naruto opened the note attached to the cylinder and began to read. This young Uratha is a fetish weapon, most commonly called a clave, known as the wolf's fang. It is a double-bladed spear, to unlock it, you only need to twist the edge of the handle. The direction you twist determines the type of blade that is released. Twisting upward will release a broad double-edged blade, and twisting downward will release a crescent-shaped blade. To reseal the blade, simply twist the hilt in the opposite direction. Both ends, once fully extended, are detachable from each other by twisting both ends in different direction, left up and right down, simultaneously while pulling on the handle. So you could use them separately as shorthand weapons as well. To reattach them, merely bring the ends back together quickly and twist them in the opposite direction as separating. Naruto placed the letter and picked up the clave. He held it out at arm's reach and twisted the left side of the handle upward. With a barely audible shink, the shaft extended another 2 feet with a wolf head popping open and a 1/2 foot long doubled-edged spearhead popping out. Naruto was impressed as he gripped the other side of the handle and twisted it downward. The same sound and extension of the shaft occurred, but instead of opening to reveal a spear blade, the wolf's jaw distended like a snake and an open crescent blade spread out about 1/2 foot in each direction. The inside was razor sharp and the outside appeared to be bladed as well past the wolf head. Naruto then gave the now fully extended weapon a practiced twirl and a few jabs and slashes with both ends. He then broke the shaft apart as the instructions stated and repeated the procedure with both separated ends. After he finished, he reattached them both and let out a low whistle. Being friends with Konoha's weapon mistress and student to a special jounin who specialized in weapons, Naruto had learned the basics to handling most weapons, spears included. Even with his limited experience in the matter, Naruto could tell the weapon was perfectly balanced and designed. A true masterpiece, as Tenten would say. I am gonna need to stop by Ten's shop and pick up a scroll on a double-bladed palm style. Thought the blonde were ninja eager to start training with his new weapon. Kyuubi nodded within his head, a good weapon is useless if you don't train with it. She stated sagely. Naruto only nodded and retracted both blades before putting his new weapon safely down on the table, before placing his hands back into the box to pull out the next item. When he removed his hands, they now held a longbow with a quiver attached to it full of arrows. The bow was made of white ash and had images of the moon going through its cycles carved into it, with the full moon on top and the new moon on the bottom. The string glowed a soft silver gray, but didn't burn Naruto's finger, so he figured it wasn't silver. The quiver was made of soft gray leather and held about 50 arrows. The arrows held within had shafts of white ash, like the bow itself, silver feathers, and a dull gray metal head. The most common arrow designs were all shown in the quiver. Broad crescent-shaped frog catch arrows, designed for dealing damage to unarmored foes, narrow piercing heads, designed to penetrate armor, rounded fouling head, to incapacitate without killing and standard broadheads. Naruto slowly opened the note attached and read. This bow is called Moonlight and it is another clave. Not only do the arrows that it fires fly truer and swifter than others fired from a normal bow, but by focusing your essence into the bow, you create arrows of pure essence that pierces solid matter and tracks your opponents, no matter how quickly they move or dodge. The quiver is also special and is designed to recreate any arrows fired from it at moonrise, but you can quickly refill it by merely channeling essence into it. The exact number of each type of arrow is determined by you when it is refilled, otherwise, it is 20 broadheads, 10 frog catch, 10 fouling, and 10 piercing. Naruto smiled. Bows were pretty uncommon weapons among shinobi, since it was difficult to master the art of the bow when combining it with shinobi training, but the few who mastered them were respected, since they could attack from farther distances than most shinobi, and with an unrivaled deadliness. Better add a scroll on kick to the list of things to pick up at the shop. Naruto told Kyuubi, who nodded before adding, man, I'm going to need a lot of essence to power all these tools, not to mention all the charms I'm gonna learn. Kyuubi snickered at this statement before stating, I don't think that'll be a problem, Naruto-kun. Why do you say that, Kyuubi-chan? The blonde asked. Well, since you have such large chakra reserves, your essence reserves, which mirror them, are quite large as well, not to mention that you can easily convert chakra into essence, and vice versa with only a little concentration. So I think running out of either one will be the least of your worries. The fox spirit explained. Naruto nodded. He knew about his high reserves, but the fact that his essence reserves mirrored them and he could change chakra into essence and essence into chakra with only a little concentration was news to him. He smiled as he pulled back the bowstring and focused some of his essence into it. Instantly an arrow made of jagged silver light burst forth on the taunt string. Whistling softly, Naruto slowly let the bow go slack as the essence arrow disappeared. He then placed both the quiver and the bow beside the wolf's fang and reached into the box to pull out the next gift he'd received. As he removed his hand, he pulled out a book. Its covers were made of dull brown leather without a title, and the pages appeared stiff and yellowed with age. Before opening it, Naruto picked up the letter attached to the front cover and scanned it. This book is a collection of most of the rituals known to the tribes that served under the Oath of the Moon. They are sorted by level, and a special enchantment prevents you from reading ones that are beyond your ability to fully control. It also has a list of different fetishes and talents, which are fetishes that can only be used once before they are destroyed. You can create at your level, their abilities, and the type of spirit needed to create them. It should prove very useful to you given your auspice, plus it's written completely in first tongue, so most non-Uratha won't be able to use it. Naruto nodded. He had needed to ask Kyuubi about the different rites the Luna had mentioned in her discussion of his auspice powers, but had been distracted by all the information she'd given him afterward. He opened the book to the first page and began skimming through the different rituals and fetishes he could create. Some seemed very useful in day-to-day life, while others seemed to be reserved for special purposes. He noticed that he could use up to level 2 rites and create up to level 2 fetishes plus talents. He thought for a moment, but figured it was due to his Aether auspice ability. After skimming for over an hour, he put the book down next to the rest of his gifts. He then reached into the box and withdrew his next gift. He then removed his hand to find a pair of sunglasses with crescent moon-shaped lenses. He removed the attached note and read. These are called crescent glasses. They are enchanted glasses that allow you to identify the type, rank, and nature of any spirit you see merely by looking directly at them. It is useful for finding out about any spirit foes you face and determining how you rank. Kyuubi can explain about the ranking system of the spirits later. Naruto smiled as he placed the glasses on his head, and to his surprise, they didn't even affect his vision in the slightest, even in the dimly lit confines of his home. Kyuubi, what did she mean by spirit ranks? The blonde asked his totem spirit. Kyuubi then cleared her throat and began speaking in a manner similar to a schoolteacher. Spirits are ranked into 4 broad categories based on age and power. These ranks are then again subdivided into 2 or 3 subcategories within the rank. First are the Gafflings, the lowest rank, and they are divided into lesser Gafflings and greater Gafflings. Lesser Gafflings are the weakest spirits in existence. They are no more intelligent than animals, and a trained soldier or academy ninja could probably take one down in a fight. Greater Gafflings are slightly better and are divided into either stronger beasts with no intelligence or slightly stronger beings with normal human intelligence. You and most other genin, before the first change, could have taken one down in a fair fight. The next rank are the Jagglings, which are also divided into lesser and greater sub-ranks. Lesser Jagglings are the strongest you can probably take on now and could put up a good fight to a seasoned genin or amateur chunin. They are about as intelligent as humans. Greater Jagglings could give a seasoned chunin or even a jounin a hard fight and are also about as smart as humans, if not smarter. Next on the power chain are the Incarni, and these are divided into minor, lesser, and greater subranks. Minor could face down any Jounin or Anbu and probably win, lesser celestials are a match for your cage level shinobi and greater are the same rank as us Biju. They're all more intelligent than most humans. Lastly are the celestials, these guys are the gods and goddesses of myth, Luna, Amaterasu, and other great gods all fit in this rank. No living being has the power to face these beings except another celestial, but they don't appear to lower beings unless they must and they're impossible to summon. They only appear when they want to, like when Luna did it for you. There is also a legendary 5th rank called the Primordials, which Father Wolf allegedly belonged to, but none of them have existed since Pangaea. Iubi finished her explanation, and Naruto nodded as he absorbed the information before placing the sunglasses onto the Book of Rites and Fetishes, before reaching in the box again to claim his final gift. It was a small brown leather pouch with a note attached to the side. It sounded like it was full of something from the rattling sound it made as he moved it, but Naruto decided to read the note before opening it. Naruto, this pouch and the crystal inside are called spirit catchers. They are special crystals designed to hold and store spirits you defeat and slay in combat until you can bind them into fetishes or present them to other spirits. They are quite simple to use since they activate automatically when you slay a spirit. They absorb them into the crystal automatically if there are any empty ones existing in the pouch. The bag now hold about 50 crystals, which I suggest you move since the bag itself is too precious to be carried around unless you are planning on a long trip. The crystals are destroyed after you use a spirit within them, but you can easily make more. To create new ones when the old are destroyed or you just need to stock up, simply channel essence into the bag and leave it out in the open moonlight for a full night. Afterward a number of crystals will be fully formed inside depending on how much essence you spent. Naruto nodded, this would be a useful gift for when he needed to create new fetishes or other tools, but he disliked the idea of killing spirits just to make weapons. Kyuubi, sensing her charge's feelings, spoke to him, Naruto, you don't need to use good spirits, there are a lot of evil and corrupt spirits in the spirit world and it's your job as in your athlete to eliminate them. Plus remember the lowest spirits are no more intelligent than animals, so you should think of it as no different than killing a deer so you could eat its meat. The Kyuubi explained seriously. Naruto smiled, she was right and he knew that as long as he only killed either corrupt or bestial spirits, he would be fine. Thanks Kyu, I don't know what I'd do without you. He thought softly, causing the fox to blush and state, probably end up dead in a ditch by now. Naruto could only chuckle. He then removed the crystals from the pouch, each was shaped like a gemstone with an octagonal shape and was translucent silver in color. He placed them into a ninja pouch on his belt before returning the original pouch to the box for safekeeping. Naruto then yawned and looked at the clock, it was approaching midnight. Time for bed. He said aloud before gathering his new treasures and placing them back into the box and hiding it under a loose floorboard in his bedroom. Got a lot of things to do tomorrow, don't we, Kyu? He thought to the fox. Yup, we need to do a little shopping for some training scrolls for your 2 new weapons and we should probably get you some new clothes and other equipment since your old ones don't fit right anymore and no more tacky orange jumpsuits. The fox ordered. Never liked them anyway, but they're the only thing those bastard Haruno stores would sell me. The boy growled mentally, lucky for me Tenten's family likes me and owns a supply shop. I was planning on getting new clothes after I graduated anyway. Good, answered Kyuubi, you should also speak to your friends if you can, you know they're probably worried about you. After that we can start searching for a nearby locus and after those are done we can start training and mastering the basic of your new powers before we head into the shadow to start earning gifts. Naruto only nodded as he drifted off to sleep. Tomorrow his new life begins. Chapter 3. Shopping X Friends X Encounters. The next morning, Naruto woke up early the next morning with some light stretches and aerobics to work out the kinks. After going through his standard morning exercise routine created by Guy Sensei. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, a half hour of jumping jacks, and an hour of crunches and flexes. Guy's routine was designed to help Naruto keep his body in shape. His sensei had flat out told Naruto that his body wasn't built for high-power jutsu and was built for speed and agility, using his light body to improve his agility, his high stamina to keep moving faster and longer than his opponent, his lean muscles to develop a greater speed, and his natural flexibility to get past an opponent's guard. This had at first disappointed the boy since he wanted to fight head-to-head and not run away. That is until Guy showed him how the boy's combat type fought using a special subset of the Goken. Watching his sensei turn a pile of boulders into rubble using only his speed and momentum and how he moved like a striking beast with his agility had left the boy awestruck. Guy had then sealed the deal by telling Naruto that his body was more designed for that style so he could be even better at it. This had turned the boy into a training maniac just like his sensei, learning and practicing to increase and use his natural affinities in combat. I had then developed a training regimen for the boy that focused on reinforcing his existing muscle mass while allowing him to maintain his flexibility. The process had done wonders for the boy's taijutsu skills and overall physical conditioning. When, just a year ago, Naruto would have fought like a common brawler and relied on his superior healing factor and endurance to win the day, he was now a skilled combatant using his speed to either gain momentum for powerful strikes or release a rapid barrage of blows at foes, and his superior agility and flexibility to get past even the strongest foe's defense to hit with critical blows powered with speed-induced momentum. He still relied heavily on his natural endurance in combat, but now it was a trained part of his style that he used just like any other skill. Deciding to hold off on his normal after-workout run until later, since he needed to get going if he was going to meet Tenten at her family's shop in time to do some shopping before she left for Guy's early morning practice, that he presumed continued even now that the three had become a genin team without him. The thought of his two friends becoming genin without him filled the young blonde with a sense of sadness and disappointment, but he shook it off. He intended to tell them both about his secret today when they met, along with discussing it with Guy-sensei, since the older man probably knew. He wasn't angry at Guy for not telling him, since the old man had made it a law that he couldn't, but he was worried about how his friends would react when they found out. As he entered his shower, Naruto found himself feeling frightened. What if they hate me like the villagers after they find out? He asked himself. They won't. Assured Kyuubi, those two are true friends Naruto, and they'll accept you for who you are, the Kyuubi reassured him. Her words helped dull Naruto's fears, though they still lingered in the back of his mind. Thanks, Kyu-chan. Thought the werewolf. The fox only blushed at the nickname while nodding her head. With his mind now cleared, Naruto exited the shower and got dressed. He noticed that his old clothes no longer fit him right due to his growth spurt, but he made do by cutting of the legs and sleeve of an old shirt and pants and adding a slit into either side of the shirt and the remaining legs of his pants to allow him to move freely without the clothing constricting him. If there was one thing that Naruto hated, it was tight-fitting clothing, one of the reasons he never wore the spandex bodysuits that his sensei and best friend favored. The result was a slightly tattered pair of shorts and a sleeveless shirt that left a small section of his toned stomach exposed. It wouldn't win him any fashion awards, but it looked decent enough for the purpose and was still loose enough for him to move easily. He then removed the Ghost Keeper box from its hiding place. He opened it and removed a few of his gifts. The wolf's fang he removed and hung it on the small of his back using a special sheath he found in the box. Moonlight and its quiver were hung over his left and right shoulders respectively for easy reach and use. The crescent glasses he placed on the bridge of his nose, and the tome of rites and spirit catcher pouch he left in the box for safekeeping, though he did remove the pouch of crystals from the box and hung it on his, now greatly loosened, belt before returning the box to its hiding place. Now ready for whatever happened to him, Naruto left and locked his apartment behind him. As he walked through the streets of Konoha, he noticed something different about how the villagers treated him. They still glared at him and muttered insults at him under their breath, but besides that they left him alone. He guessed word had spread through the village's gossip lines about the incident yesterday. He wondered if he would get any heat from the stone, but he doubted it. In order to explain the attack to anyone who had any real influence to punish him, the fool would have to speak under a truth detection jutsu and then reveal that he threw the stone first, and if he did that, Naruto could always claim self-defense and the idiot would be the one in trouble. Naruto smirked at the idea. Even if he was summoned because of it, he could always call for a truth detection jutsu on his own and explain the situation. Even the idiots on the civilian council couldn't take away his right to defend himself. The thought of the looks on those bastards' faces brought a light snicker out of the blonde's mouth. His good mood was soon ruined by a shout of, "Halt, demon whelp!" from behind him. Naruto turned slowly and caught a look at the person who had just shouted. He found three figures standing in the center of the road. Two were large and heavily muscled, with the appearance of laborers. One was a bald man without a shirt and a scar on his right cheek, and the other was a hairy-faced fellow who was more heavy-set than his companion, but still heavily muscled with a sleeveless muscle shirt covering his girth. The third figure stood in between the two giants. He was a scrawny little man with the same pink hair as the idiot from yesterday. Just great, another Haruno, he's probably here to avenge the honor of his clan after I broke that other idiot's nose. Thought the blonde with a mental sigh. Sure enough, the next words to leave his mouth were, "Demon, I, Kazuru Haruno, have come to avenge the honor of my cousin Shupi who you mercilessly attacked yesterday." He spoke in the typical shrill Haruno voice. Nailed it, thought Kyuubi from within her host. Naruto snorted, "What honor?" He threw a stone at me while my back was turned. As for my merciless attack, I merely returned his stone. Directly to his face. Responded the blonde with a grin. "Silence!" shrieked the Haruno. "You two," he indicated his lackeys, "hold him down while I administer some justice to this demon filth," ordered the Haruno, while he pulled out a knife with a wicked look in his eye. The two goons approached Naruto and expected the young man to run, which was his usual reaction to these attacks. Not anymore. The blonde looked at the two and stated flatly, since you two are probably just hired muscle, I'm gonna give you a simple warning. I'm not the same kid who used to run from a fight to avoid causing trouble anymore. If you idiots attack me, I will attack back. Just thought you deserved the warning. Finished the blonde as he got into a taijutsu stance. The two thugs were momentarily shocked by the blonde's statement and the confidence in the boy's voice, but neither backed down. Instead the bald one rushed forward, arms spread wide to grab the boy and pin him down so his boss could do his work. Naruto spun around the lumbering charge and brought a heel kick to the man's ankle, causing him to fall forward onto the ground, with his momentum carrying him skidding forward a few feet. Thinking the boy distracted by his companion's attack, the hairy thug charged the boy with a thick fist cocked back, ready to smash the boy to the ground. Naruto easily deflected the blow with a chop to the wrist and then continued with a palm strike directly into the man's oversized gut. As the man bended over from the force of the blow, Naruto finished with a spin kick directly to the side of the man's head, knocking him out instantly as he fell to the ground. The man's companion had by then regained his footing and charged the blonde from behind, while throwing a punch of his own. Naruto easily dodged the punch with a spin and using the momentum, launched an elbow strike into the man's exposed throat. As the man bent forward gagging, Naruto finished him with a knee strike to the jaw, sending the man falling backward to the ground, unconscious. Naruto dusted of his hands before turning to the Haruno with a bored expression on his face and asked, "Is that all?" in a bored tone. The now enraged Haruno shrieked in rage before charging the blonde, slashing wildly with his knife. Naruto easily caught the man's wrist and delivered a quick twist to it, causing the man to drop his knife. Catching the blade with his free hand, Naruto then delivered a sweep kick combined with throw to send the Haruno to the ground on his back. Naruto then stood over the now downed man with his own knife raised over his head. With a shriek of terror from the now horrified Haruno, Naruto brought the blade down towards his throat. Thunk. The blade had buried itself hilt deep into the dirt beside the newly fainted Haruno's neck. Naruto sniffed in disgust as he noticed a small puddle that had formed between the now fainted Haruno's legs. Pathetic. He muttered as he stood back up and continued on his journey to the Sumisu shop, leaving the three unconscious men in the street. He noticed that the civilians had stopped their muttering and now gave him a wide berth. Naruto smiled at this. These idiots will soon learn that I'm not gonna take their abuse anymore without payback, thought the young Uratha. Kyuubi only smirked within her cage, proud of her container's new attitude. Naruto, she thought, you are growing into a true Uratha, a proud warrior who will not be pushed around by anyone and only shows respect to those who have earned it. You're also starting to show the signs of becoming a worthy mate. She finished with a nearly invisible lecherous grin while licking her lips. Naruto soon arrived at his friend's store. It was a red building without any decoration or ornamentation. The only sign that it was even a store was the small red sign above the door that had Sumisu written on it in deep red letters with a single kunai and shuriken replacing the eye. This wasn't for lack of effort on the owner's part, but a strategy to attract only the customers the owners wanted. The Sumisu shop dealt only in the highest quality ninja weapons, tools, equipment, and training scrolls. Every member of the Sumisu family was an expert in the art of forging, maintaining, and/or using weapons, and they'd be dead before they would ever let any of their good fall into undeserving hands. So they kept the shop's outward appearance simple in order to discourage civilians who wanted to have a fancy-looking decoration and not a battle-ready tool. They only sold to actual shinobi, serious academy students, and others like them. The family also refused to deal with any of the Naruto haters among the populace. Tenten's father, Tsuchi Sumisu, had gone as far as to hunt down and nearly beat to death a shinobi who had bought a sword from the clan and had attempted to use it to harm Naruto. That memory brought a smile to the boy's lips as he entered the shop. He looked around and saw a woman at counter. He smiled and waved at her, "Hi Teki-san, good morning." Tenten's mother looked like a full-grown version of her daughter, except her eyes were sea green instead of Tenten's chocolate brown, and her face was a little softer. The woman looked up at the voice and, after taking a moment to recognize the changed blonde, smiled and said, "Morning, Naruto-kun, are you here to see Tenten?" she asked. Naruto nodded before speaking that, and I need to do some shopping. I've gone through a sudden growth spurt, as you can see, and need some new clothes. I've also gained a couple weapons and wanted to buy some training scrolls for them. The blonde finished indicating his new bow and the small rod on the back of his belt. Hayo nodded her head, "Well, I'll let Tenten help you with the shopping. She's upstairs right now doing a bit of prep work before she has to go meet her new team in a few hours." The woman looked sadly at Naruto. "I heard about what happened and you not being able to take the exams. Tenten was crushed when she found out you two weren't going to be on a team together." She then got a wary look in her eye. "I've also heard rumors about an encounter with some villagers earlier and you've learned a certain secret. If you're referring to the fox, then yes, I know about it. I wanted to thank both you and your husband for treating me so kindly despite my condition," said Naruto with a bow. Hayo simply waved her hand at him, "You're you and the fox is the fox. Anyone who can't see otherwise is an idiot. She explained calmly and then she asked, are you going to tell Tenten? It's one of the reasons I came to see her and Lee today. They're my dearest friends and I only hope they. Naruto trailed off while looking away. They will. Hayo confirmed confidently before turning away, I'll go get my daughter. Wait there for a minute please. Before she headed up the stairs behind him. Naruto did as the woman instructed and waited for his female friend. His newly enhanced ears caught the sound of Hayo moving up the stairs, brief message to her daughter, and then the sound of much hurrying and scraping as a young woman came barreling down the steps. As she got to the bottom she stopped and stared at the changes that had overtaken her old friend. Naruto took this moment to look over his female friend. She wasn't that much taller than Naruto before his transformation, standing at about 5'5", but she kept her body in good shape and she was very pretty, at least in Naruto's opinion. She had deep chocolate brown eyes, a soft face that showed her heritage, deep brown hair worn into 2 buns at the top of her head, which Naruto always found cute and would constantly tease her about them. She wore a pink sleeveless Chinese shirt and a pair of deep blue shinobi pants. Across her back she carried a half-dozen scrolls that Naruto knew kept her weapon collection, each one of which she was a deadly master in using. Naruto also noted she wore her new leaf headband across her forehead. And physically Shippuden with canon clothes except for the scrolls. He always remembered how pretty his old friend looked. Though he would never admit it, he had a bit of crush on her, but he wouldn't risk their friendship by acting on it. Then Ten started to speak after a moment and this brought Naruto out of his trance. Naruto? Is that really you? She asked. Naruto grinned at her shocked look, the one and the only Ten-chan. What, do I really look that different? He said with his characteristic foxy grin. Then Ten smiled at her friend's usual goofy attitude before walking forward and hugging him. This display of affection caught them both by surprise. Ten blushed before saying, I mean me and Lee were so worried about you after I heard what happened to those ex-instructors and that you were hospitalized. What happened anyway? She asked with a worried look on her face, nearly replacing her blush at her earlier misstatement. I promise I'll explain everything to you after we meet up with Guy-sensei and Lee. By the way, who was assigned as your third team member? Naruto asked curiously. Then Ten developed a frown, Niji Hyuga. She answered. She had been looking forward to being on the same team as Naruto. She developed a bit of a crush on the optimistic blonde when he had helped her in the academy when they first met and she hoped serving on the same team would allow them to see just how strong their feelings for each other were. Naruto understood his friend's foul mood. Niji Hyuga was the rookie of the year in their graduating class and one of the most arrogant pricks he had ever met. The guy seemed to have both a superiority and inferiority complex going on at the same time. He constantly spoke about how everything was controlled by fate. He often talked down to him and Lee, saying their efforts to improve themselves were futile since they were both fated to remain losers. This had earned him Naruto's instant hatred since the blonde never believed in stuff like fate. Some of Naruto's fondest memories of the year were pranking the arrogant ass. Ouch. I really pity you two now. You guys have a team meeting today? Questioned the blonde. Yeah, in about 4 hours at the usual training ground. Ten answered. That means we have about an hour before Guy and Lee show up for a youthful warm-up. Naruto stated and Ten nodded. They had both realized that Guy and, through imitating his idol, Lee always arrived 3 hours before training officially began. In that time, would you mind helping pick out some new clothes and equipment? I could really use your expertise. Naruto requested. Finally getting rid of the kill me orange jumpsuits. Questioned Ten. She hated those things and offered to buy Naruto some replacements herself, but the blonde always refused. He said he wanted to hold off until graduation for an image change. Yup, they just don't fit anymore and I'm tired of playing the fool. Naruto agreed before adding, I also need some help picking a couple new weapon training scrolls. I've recently come into possession of a couple new pieces of equipment that I want to master. Naruto said, indicating his bow and then the rod on his back. Well, I know we have a couple of training scrolls on Kickman in the back, but I've never seen a rod like that before. What does it do? She asked. Naruto smirked as he demonstrated Wolf's Fang's different abilities and functions. Ten was awestruck by the weapon's versatility. She even asked if she could test it for a moment and Naruto happily agreed. After going through the motions with the weapons, Ten was even more impressed with the blade. It was perfect in every sense of the word. The blades of both the crescents and spears were razor keen, the shaft was strong and solid without adding extra weight and the handle fitted perfectly into the wielder's hands. When she separated and reattached the staff ends, she was even more impressed by the ease of the motions. This weapon is a masterpiece. Then Ten said in awe as she reluctantly returned it to Naruto, who nodded in agreement. I said the same thing when I first wielded it. So do you know of any scrolls that could help me train with it? Asked the blonde. Then Ten seemed to think for a moment before she got an idea. The thing is that this is a one-of-a-kind weapon, but I know of 3 different weapons that each resemble part of that one. There's the Lajatang, the double-blade Yari, and the monk spade. She then lead the blonde to a wall filled with palms. The Lajatang was a double-headed weapon with the same crescent moon-shaped blades as his wolf's fang. The double-blade Yari was the same with its broad double-edged spearhead. Lastly, the monk spade was slightly different. While one end appeared the same as the crescent blade, the other was a flattened bell-shaped blade. Naruto guessed the weapon worked just like when Wolf's Fang had one of each head out, using the bell head for precision strikes and the crescent head for broad strikes. After Naruto examined each weapon, Tenten spoke again. I think you should study each one so you can master the blade in all its forms. I know we have scrolls on each and they all take note on separable end pieces. Tenten finished proudly. Naruto nodded his head in agreement. Granted, it would take a lot of work to master 3 weapons at once and then learn to interchange the styles and combine them, but Naruto knew that the best things came from hard work. He smiled before saying, that takes care of the weapon scrolls. Now all I need are some new clothes. Then Ten nodded as she dragged her friend over to the clothing section of the shop. After spending nearly the entire hour trying on clothes and getting Tenten's opinion, Naruto had made his decision. He had decided to add bits of each of his senseis into his new look. He chose some khaki brown ninja pants, a deep green short-sleeved shirt, a pair of dark shinobi sandals, and a tan overcoat similar to Anko's. He also chose a pair of dull orange bracers that ended just before his wrists that reminded him of Guy Sensei's leg warmers and wrapped some bandages on both his lower legs and upper arms near the elbow, like Iruka Sensei wore. When he exited the changing room in his new attire, Tenten whistled. The look really worked for him. It gave him a wild look that she thought suited the blonde's personality. With his new attire decided, Naruto grabbed another 4 pairs of everything he'd decided for his new look, as well as the 5 scrolls Tenten had selected for his weapon study. 2 were for Kikm. One focusing on long-ranged sniping and the other focusing on normal archery techniques. The other 3 were introductory scrolls on each of the 3 weapons Tenten had shown him. All the scrolls contained a jutsu or 2 to combine with a new weapon. Naruto paid for his new equipment, though Hayo insisted on him taking the clothing as an early birthday gift, and the 2 shinobi departed to meet up with Guy and Lee at Training Ground 24. Naruto and Tenten arrived at the training ground a short time later. It was a standard Konoha training ground with equal parts forest and open land. It also had a small lake near the southern edge and a large number of training dummies near the center that were currently being brutally beaten by the oddest pair of creatures one could ever find. The larger of the 2 was a tall, well-muscled man about 6'1" with deep black hair cut into a bowl cut, a pair of gigantic eyebrows, strong hard-cut features, and a toothy smile. He wore a full-body green bodysuit, a standard jounin vest, blue ninja sandals, a pair of orange leg warmers, and a leaf headband tied around his waist as a belt. The other was like a smaller version of the larger one, standing at about 5'8" with features so similar one would think them father and son, rather than student and teacher. The only differences were that the younger man's features were a little softer. He wore bandages wrapped around his wrists and forearms, and his vest was a simple ninja vest without any marks of rank. These 2 creatures were Mito Guy and Rock Lee. The 2 turned and looked at the approaching figures. Both instantly recognized Tenten, but it took them a moment to realize that it was Naruto walking beside her. Lee instantly ran forward and greeted his best friend rival. Naruto, it is good to see you, my rival, and it seems your flames of youth are burning even brighter to have caused such a change in your body. Lee shouted happily while entering his good guy pose and flashing them both a toothy grin. Indeed, my youthful student, your fellow youthful student, must surely have entered a new and more youthful era in his already youthful life. Agreed Guy loudly. Both Naruto and Tenten sighed at the volume of their friend and older mentor. Both had gotten used to the high volume and love of the word youthful that comprised Guy and Lee's way of speaking, but it was still annoying. It's good to see both of you too, said Naruto before he got serious. I wanted to explain what happened to me to you 3 first, since I trust you guys plus Anko and Iruka Sensei the most. But first, I have a very important secret that both Lee and Tenten need to hear, but I think you already know it, Guy Sensei. Naruto said while looking at Guy with a calm yet serious expression on his face. Guy nodded his head. He'd heard from the village that Naruto now knew about the fox being sealed inside him, and he guessed that it was the secret that he wanted to reveal to Lee and Tenten. Guy was proud that his student trusted both his friends with the truth, and he was certain that both would accept him for who he was. Both Lee and Tenten were curious about what had caused their usually jovial teammate to become so serious. Naruto turned his eyes to his 2 dearest friends and explained, guys, this secret is an S-class village secret that I need both of you to swear that you will not reveal to anyone. A law by the 3rd states that anyone other than me who discloses it will be executed. Do you guys understand? Both Lee and Tenten were surprised by the level of secrecy that surrounded this secret, but both nodded their heads for Naruto to show that they understood. Naruto put on a determined look and pushed away the fears that were rising in his belly. It was now or never. You see, Naruto started 15 years ago when the Kyuubi attacked the village. Naruto told them everything about how the fox was sealed inside him at birth. Both Tenten and Lee were shocked by the revelation of their friend's life. Tenten spoke shakily, so that's why you were. She stopped before finishing. Naruto nodded before speaking again, now that you guys know the truth I'll understand if you don't want to be near me anymore. Naruto's sentence was cut off as he was hugged by Tenten. Don't be an idiot. You're you and the fox is the fox. We would never abandon you for such a stupid reason. She said into his shoulder without letting him go. Tenten is correct Naruto, we are your friends through and through. Anyone who can't see past the fox is the epitome of unyouthfulness. Lee stated while putting a hand on his friend's shoulder. Naruto could only smile as he returned Tenten's hug. Thank you. He whispered softly. His friends only smiled as Tenten released her hug. I was proud of his students and he sorely wished they had gotten to form a team together. They would have made a perfect combat trio. Lee could have handled the close-range fighting and Tenten handling mid to long range with her weapons. Naruto was the perfect support member moving between close range with his own taijutsu and mid to long range with his skill with ninjutsu. He had even gone so far as to complain to the Hokage himself about letting Naruto take a makeup since it wasn't the boy's fault he'd missed the test, but Sarutobi had been adamant about not showing favoritism to his grandson and forced the man to take the Hyuga onto his team in Naruto's place. I didn't have a problem boy and he wouldn't begrudge him for taking Naruto's spot, but he was sure the boy's arrogance would negatively affect their teamwork. Now that that's out of the way, I wanted to tell you guys about what happened the night I was attacked. Naruto started speaking again and everyone's attention was again riveted to the blonde boy as he explained Mizuki's attack on him with the other ex-Chunin, getting an angry look from the others and how he'd been told the secret. He then told him about the first change, how he'd met Luna and the Kyuubi. When he explained what had happened between him and the Kyuubi, everyone else was shocked. He asked Guy not to tell the Hokage unless he was directly ordered to, and he agreed trusting his student's judgment. As he finished explaining his new bloodline and the abilities it had, the others were amazed. Yosh! Shouted a now excited Lee, this new bloodline of yours is surely an embodiment of your youthful spirit my friend. I can't wait to face it in a sparring match. Me too bushy brows, agreed Naruto before continuing, but I want to wait a while until I can master how to use it. The blonde explained, getting an understanding nod from his friends. Well, if you need any help practicing with those new weapons let me know okay. Stated Tenten smiling. The same goes for both me and my youthful apprentice if you want to practice your new forms taijutsu. Said Guy in his good guy pose, which Lee soon followed. Naruto only smiled and nodded at his friends. The three continued to talk, with Guy occasionally adding his opinion, but otherwise simply happily watching his three-student talk about changes that had occurred over the past 2 weeks and on how Naruto's next term in the academy would go. Naruto had accepted the fact and stated that he could use the time to completely master his new bloodline. His friends agreed that it was a good idea. He also explained his plan to enter the shadow after he got the basic down to earn some new gift and Guy told him it would be best to tell the Hokage about his plans beforehand so the old man wouldn't send Anbu on a needless search. Naruto agreed reluctantly. Both his friends and Guy understood about the fallout between him and the old man and agreed the Hokage had no right to keep the Kyuubi a secret from the blonde. As the four continued their discussion and planning meeting to train together, even if they weren't an official team they were still friends and wanted to continue practicing together, Naruto's nose picked up a scent approaching them. He alerted his friends and the three stopped their discussion and looked toward the incoming presence. Out of trees came a figure about the same height as Lee, maybe a bit taller. He had shoulder-length black hair and a calm face. He wore a short-sleeved jacket and a pair of black shorts. He had bandages across one of his legs and arms and had a kunai shuriken holster strapped on the same leg. And again Shippuden body with cannon clothes, the most shocking part of him were his eyes, they were slate gray with no pupil visible, announcing him as a Hyuga, one Niji Hyuga to be exact. The Hyuga looked at group before scowling at the blonde, what are you doing here failure? He asked in a snide voice. I have just as much right to use a training ground and speak to my friends as you do bug eyes. Naruto responded coldly, using his favorite nickname for the arrogant Hyuga. The Hyuga scowl deepened, be that as it may, we have a team meeting to attend, so I believe a failure who couldn't even show up for the exams should simply leave. Though I am not happy being placed on a team with a talentless fool who can't perform even the most basic of jutsu and a girl who relies solely on toys to win her battles. The Hyuga responded icily. Tenten and Lee both growled at the insults, but Naruto chuckled and stated, that's some big talk from a weakling who believed that everything is predestined and doesn't have the strength to fight it. With that said he turned and bid his goodbyes to his friends and teacher, who all returned the gesture before the blonde took off and leaving behind a very pissed Neji and a snickering Tenten and Lee. As Naruto continued to leap through the woods on his search to find a private spot to train in his new powers, he noticed something. It was an odd tingling in the back of his nose, like a scent without a smell. "Kyuubi, what's going on?" he asked his totem. The fox spirit quickly answered, "You're picking up the scent of a locust nearby." Naruto grew excited then replied, "Should we investigate?" "Yes, but be cautious. Locusts in the physical world are often guarded by spirits who make them their homes to draw power from the essence they generate. So you may have to fight for it. Don't worry about harming an innocent spirit. Any spirit that spends a lot of time in the material world is either corrupted by it or is corrupting it." The fox responded. Naruto nodded. Kyuubi had explained earlier how spirits that enter the mortal world were usually either corrupted by their surroundings and driven mad, or they were manipulative beings that stayed there to help empower themselves by affecting and controlling mortals. Either way, it was his duty to take it down before it attempted to harm his home. Chapter 4. Locust Fight X Shadow Training. Naruto followed the scent of the locust to a nearby expanse of open land. Naruto didn't recognize it as a training ground, so he decided it was one of the open construction areas that the Leaf had. You see, when the first and second Hokages had created the Leaf Village and the surrounding walls, they had planned for the village to continue to grow through attracting new clans and new ninja. Even after 5 generations of growth since its founding, Konoha still had many open areas available for new clans to create compounds or the village proper to expand into. This looked to be one of those areas located near the infamous Forest of Death that Anko had trained Naruto in several times. The area was mostly an expanse of flat solid land surrounded by trees in a circular ring. The only defining feature was what appeared to be a small spring in the center. Naruto focused on the spring. It was that point that was giving off the weird unscent that Kyuubi said indicated a locust. As he approached, he caught a strange scent in the air. It was wet, like a pond or river, but there was something more to it, a smell that Naruto instinctively recognized as spiritual. Approaching cautiously, his reflexes didn't fail his as a part of his mind sensed something wrong, and he leapt backwards. Just in time to avoid a lash of water coming from the spring. Instantly a column of water burst upward from the spring and reshapes itself into an almost human-like form. The being made of water appeared to be a human woman, except for the fact that its arms ended in long tentacles instead of hands. It had no legs, instead it was supported by a serpent-like tail, and its face was a blank mask, except for 2 eyes that glowed a dark blue. Naruto adjusted the crescent glasses on his nose and activated their power to get a better idea of what he now faced. Type: Water Hydrona. Rank: Greater Gafflings. Nature: Corrupted Water Spirit. Greater Gaffling, does that mean I can beat her, Kyuubi? Asked the blonde to his totem guide. Yup, pup, you can take her. I know her species, they're a common breed of elementals in the shadow, and they're on the lower end of the power totem pole in their category. Confirmed the fox. Naruto nodded before asking, "You've mentioned corrupted spirits before, Kyuubi, but I don't know what a corrupted spirit is." Questioned the blonde. "Explain later, dodge now," shouted the Kyuubi as her container ducked and rolled under another lash of the Hydrona's whip-like arms. The blonde returned to his feet with a kunai in hand. He didn't draw Wolf's Fang yet because he hadn't got a chance to train with it. Anko's lessons on weapon use came rolling into his head. Don't get cocky and try to fight with a weapon you've never used before. In those circumstances, the blade will be more of a hindrance than an aid. Filthy half-breed, hissed the water Hydrona, its voice echoing out of nowhere, "I'll enjoy peeling the flesh from your bones." The spirit laughed maniacally as she continued to lash at the blonde with both tentacles. The boy dodged both strike with a side jump, but the left tentacle managed to rip through his shirt and leave a light gash on the side of his chest. His combined Uratha and Kyuubi healing factors instantly healed the minor wound as he threw his kunai before performing a pair of quick hand seals. "Kunai Cage Bunshin," shouted the blonde as one kunai became a dozen. The serpentine spirit was able to slip under most of them with a flowing dodge, but 2 caught her in the tail. The spirit's hiss of pain showed that he'd hurt the creature with that one, but not by much. The pain only seemed to egg the spirit on, and her face seemed to ripple where her mouth should have been, and soon fired a stream of highly pressurized water at the blonde. Naruto jumped to the side, barely avoiding the blast of water that dug a deep trench into the earth. Well, since physical attacks don't seem to slow her down, let's see how she likes a dose of elemental jutsu. Thought the blonde with an evil grin. The blonde then charged forward, quickly going through some hand seals, and shouted, "Lightning style. Wave current." As he closed in, he brought his hands together in fists before quickly pulling them apart. As he did, several currents of lightning seemed to connect his fists before they lashed out in a spreading wave toward the Hydrona. The area was too wide for the spirit to dodge. As the wave of electricity hit her, the Hydrona shrieked in pain and quivered before launching her whip-like arms at Naruto in a desperate attempt to stop the blonde's approach. One Naruto easily sidestepped, but he caught the other on his right shoulder. Grunting in pain, but still moving, Naruto finished closing the gap and formed another set of hand seals before shouting, "Wind style." blasting pressure palm. He brought his open palm, now glowing bright green, directly into the creature's chest. A blast of condensed wind chakra hit the creature and blasted it backward and into the ground. The creature coughed weakly a couple of times before it collapsed in on itself and turned into a puddle of water. Naruto sighed a breath of relief before he got a grin on his face. Easy win. He stated proudly. Don't get cocky, cub, those things are barely better than lesser gafflings, and that's only because of their intelligence, which that one lacks since she was driven mad by her corruption. So in reality what you just fought was one of the weakest spirits. You're gonna need to get a lot stronger than you are now if you want to survive in the shadow. Naruto nodded his head. He remembered how often Anko, Guy, and Iruka had drilled into his head that getting cocky meant getting himself killed. Kyuubi, I know I asked earlier, but what do you mean when you refer to some spirits as corrupted? The blonde asked curiously. Kyuubi sighed before explaining, corrupted spirits are spirits that have lost sight of their nature. Spirits are highly connected to their nature, it's a part of us, a part of our soul. If we lose touch with it we can go mad or be turned into true monsters. It's what every wise spirit fears. How does a spirit become corrupted? It can happen for a number of reasons, but there are 3 common ways. The focus of the spirit's nature is destroyed or damaged in some way, the spirit is exposed to some kind outside stimuli, or surrounded by strong negative emotions for a prolonged period of time, or the spirit gets power hungry and does it to itself in order to become stronger. Naruto only nodded his head slowly in understanding. In any case these corrupted spirits were dangerous. As he thought of it, noticed a soft glow emanating from one of his pouches. Opening the pouch he noticed that one of the spirit catcher gems had changed. Instead of iridescent silver, it now glowed a deep sea blue with the kanji for water now sitting in its center in a near black blue. It appears that you've captured your first spirit, Naruto-kun. Water spirits are very useful in crafting fetishes that deal with healing, fluidity, and of course water. It should prove very useful. Naruto continued to study the stone for a minute before putting it into another pouch. He then approached the locus again warily, prepared just in case the water hydrona had any friends lying in wait. Sniffing the air and noting no other creatures in or nearby the pond that had the same spiritual scent that he detected earlier, he finally approached the spring. As he got closer he could feel the energy irradiating from the spring. It was like stepping into the warm steam right after you got out of the shower, relaxing but at the same time energizing. When Naruto reached the edge of the spring and stepped in, it felt like a bolt of energy just hit him. It was the same rush he felt when he experienced the first change, only more serene and less savage. When he finally reached the center of the pond he sat into a meditative posture, leaving him submerged up to his shoulders, and just breathed in and out. As he breathed in, a transparent blue mist seemed to rise from the water's surface and flow into the blonde's mouth in streams. As he breathed in the mist he felt his energy restored. Once he felt as if he couldn't contain anymore he stood and left the pond. As he left Naruto felt better than he had felt since the first change had taken place. Like he'd just eaten a big meal and was completely stuffed, but that only described it to a level. This was something deeper, like a more important need than simple hunger had been fulfilled. Kyuubi smiled at her charge as the thoughts rushed through his head, that pup is how you feel when your essence has been fully restored. After the first change you were left with only a partially full reserve, but now you're running with a full tank. So how does it feel? Kyuubi already knew the answer, but wanted Erward to speak it in his own words. I feel the blonde's whisper paused as if searching for the right word before smiling and finishing, complete. Kyuubi could only nod, that was probably the best word the kid could use to describe the feeling. Well, now that you've absorbed your fill of essence, we should head home and look at those scrolls you've gotten, not to mention take a better look at that book of rites and see which ones we should use right away. Naruto only nodded and used a quick water jutsu to remove the excess water from his clothes before heading home. Later that evening, Naruto stood in front of his kitchen table with his new clothes laid out in front of him and a kunai in one hand. The book of rites was laying on the nearby countertop. Naruto was in Dalu form at Kyuubi's suggestion, since this form allowed him to tap the primal, natural energy easier than his Hishu form. He looked most the same except he'd shot up another half a foot to stand at about 6'5", and now had broader shoulders, his hair was thicker throughout his body, his teeth and nails were sharper, and his face now seemed more bestial with larger pointed ears and more feral features. He was wearing only a leftover pair of loose pants. As Naruto slowly concentrated he cut his palm with the kunai and let a bit of blood smear onto the blade, then while slowly chanting under his breath in first tongue, he drew a small circle on the nearest piece of clothing. Instantly the clothing absorbed the blood and now stood fresh and clean. Naruto continued the process with each article of clothing he'd bought and owned, re-wetting the kunai with his palm when he had to, until every piece of clothing he now owned had been marked. With that he finished the ritual and thought to himself, now, I don't have to worry about buying new clothes every time I use my shapeshifting ability. A very useful rite. This rite of dedication allows the user to bless his clothes so that they either grow with him or merge into his new body when he changes. Kyuubi stated. Naruto only nodded as he returned to his Hishu form and began to put his new clothing away. After finishing he moved to sit down on the couch and continue his study of the Book of Rites when he heard a knock at the door. Wonder who that is? Thought the blonde as returned the book to the ghost keeper box before placing it under the table. He then stood and went to the door and looked through the peephole. Standing in front of the door was a familiar figure that brought a smile to the boy's lips as he opened the door to let the individual in. As he did so he smiled and said, "Hey Atari-chan, how have you been and to what do I owe the pleasure of your company?" As the woman walked in, Naruto couldn't help but stare at the 21-year-old. She was tall, about the same height as Lee at 5'8" and statuesque in her build. Her skin was pale like most Uchihas, but her strong limbs showed her efforts in her training. Her hair was raven feather black and fell to her shoulders, her lips a soft red even without the makeup, and her features were strong but held a softness to them. Her eyes were a deep but soft black. She was well built with a pair of C-cup breasts and a well-toned body. In every sense of the word Atari Uchiha was beautiful. At least it was what Naruto always thought and had told her on a couple of occasions. This had always caused the Uchiha to blush and respond with a baka and a friendly tap on the head. Atari smiled at her younger friend's greeting. Secretly she developed feelings for the blonde over the years she spent keeping an eye on him while in Anbu. They had started as feelings of respect for a person only 6 years younger than her that strongly carried a burden that she knew would cause a normal man to break. Despite all the pain and hatred the boy received he still always moved forward and never let the darkness consume him. To Atari that alone was worthy of her respect, but the feelings she harbored for the blonde had grown over the years. She and the blonde started speak and she began to understand him better. She saw the wounds that the isolation and pain had placed on his soul and mind, but how he refused to let them stop him. 2 years ago an event occurred that forced her feelings for the blonde into the light. While on watch that night someone had attempted to attack her, but Naruto had put his own life on the line to intercept the blow for her. The attacker turned out to be a ninja whose family had been killed by the Kyuubi. The man had hoped to make Naruto suffer by forcing him to watch someone he cared for die in front of him. Atari had easily dispatched the man and rushed Naruto to the hospital, but the attack and Naruto's actions forced her to realize something. When she was carrying him to the hospital she was begging for anything to keep him alive. After the boy was announced safe she had felt like meaning had returned to her world. She thought of these emotions throughout the next few days and was forced to realize their source. It wasn't friendship, gratitude, or even sisterly affection, it was love. She was in love with Naruto Uzumaki. For the next year she had attempted to deny it, tried to reason her way out of it, but to no avail. A year ago when the blonde was getting closer to his friend Tenten, Atari had felt an emotion that she couldn't deny. Jealousy. That had pretty much cleared any doubts in her mind about her feelings for the blonde. Now the only problem was how to tell him and see how he felt for her. That problem was still vexing Atari. "I'm fine Naruto-kun," annoyed but fine. Noticing the curious look Naruto was giving her, Atari explained. "Father has been attempting to convince me into a marriage contract with one of the members of the clan so I can start acting like a proper Uchiha woman." She practically spat the word proper. The most of the Uchiha clan, a female Uchiha's place was in the home popping out little Uchiha babies to either earn the clan greater renown or create more Uchihas depending on their gender. Atari hated that sexist attitude of her clan and while her mother would accept it, she had no plans on doing so. Beside the only guy she ever really wanted was standing in front of her and he was no Uchiha. Naruto growled at the statement about her father's course of action. "The old bastard is just a sexist prick," he growled out. Atari only smiled at this. "Agreed," she said before continuing, "Anyway, moving away from my rotten family, the reason I stopped by was to check on and catch up with my favorite blonde since I heard you had just been released from the hospital." She said smiling before she became serious, "I've also heard that you've learned a very big secret and have taken to defending yourself in a more vigorous way." She asked. "If you're referring to the Kyuubi then yes I do know about it being sealed inside me. As for my new attitude toward being attacked, I'll just say that now that I know why I don't intend to let anyone hurt me for something that isn't my fault," answered the blonde. "Glad to hear it," Atari said while smiling, "and I'm sorry for not being able to tell you," but Atari tried to explain, but she was cut off. "I understand Atari-chan, the old man's law forbade you from doing so under the penalty of death. I've already told the old man exactly what I think of his protection measure," Naruto finished irritably. That explains why Hokage-sama is in such a poor mood." Atari responded, thinking to her meeting with the old man a few hours ago, the man had seemed quite depressed. "I hope you'll forgive him in time. Despite the stupidity of his actions, he was trying to help you." "I know and I will in time," Naruto stated solemnly before a mischievous smirk crossed his face, "but the old man is going to have to pay for it out the rear." "Still the trickster," stated Atari, chuckling. "I am who I am," responded the blonde cheekily. "By the way, how is Shisui doing?" asked the blonde. "Sadly, he's becoming more like the rest of the clan each day. I've been trying to keep him from losing himself to the arrogance, but the clan seems to be offering him something he truly desires." Naruto nodded. He'd never liked Shisui, but he tolerated him for Atari's sake. "Oh, you'll never believe what happened to me after the attack." You see, Naruto then started telling her everything he'd told his friends in Team Guy, and she was just as astounded by the blonde's new skill set. After that, the two talked for another couple hours until Atari noticed the time and decided it was time for her to head home, although a part of her wanted to ask if it would be okay for her to spend the night. Then Atari shook away those thoughts as she left, bidding her blonde companion good night and much luck with his upcoming training. Naruto returned the feelings while waving goodbye before heading to bed. Tomorrow his training for his journey into the shadow began. Time skip. 1 month later. A month came and went quickly for Naruto as the young warrior ninja trained thoroughly to gain a mastery of his new powers. His days quickly developed into a steady routine. He woke up with the sun every morning and did his morning workout, increasing it to coordinate with his physical increases. 2 hours later, he'd check his equipment before heading off to his locus, where he'd spend the next 10 hours training. First, he'd spend an hour in each of his different forms, attempting to fully understand and master each of them. Practicing from shifting from that form into one of the other 4 and vice versa, understanding each form's strengths, and practicing combat and taijutsu in each form with the help of a few shadow clones. He learned that he could control his Goru form by simply channeling chakra throughout his body after the transformation. This made the form draining to maintain for prolonged periods even with his reserves, but it would be useful in a pinch, and he wouldn't have to worry about losing his mind to an uncontrollable rage in the middle of a mission. For the next 3 hours, he'd spend training with Wolf's Fang in its different forms and Moonlight. For training in Kick, he'd set up a number of targets in the area and even used shadow clones for experience with running and dodging foes using his bow and for practice dodging attacks while firing. His accuracy was now top-notch at normal distances, but his sniping skills still needed some work. His training with Wolf's Fang was also going smoothly. He'd mastered the basics of using each of his weapons forms and was getting good at switching from one to another, but he wanted to master it before he advanced to specific styles with each weapon. He'd found the weapon was better suited for dealing with larger numbers of opponents than for one-on-one fights. The remaining 2 hours were divided between training in his jutsu and spirit charms. He'd been able to create 3 new jutsu using his Dalu and Goru forms. Wolf Style. Piercing Claws, Wolf Style. Crashing Howl, and Wolf Style. Ripping Talons. Naruto wondered if the talent he'd shown in creating new jutsus was a side effect of his auspice like his talent in rights. Kyuubi had even taught him a special technique called Fire Style. Foxfire, a very useful and adaptable fire jutsu that Naruto learned easily, despite his lack of fire affinity. Kyuubi explained it was because the technique was a kitsune technique and, as her host, he was now part kitsune, so even without a fire affinity, he would learn and master it easily. As for the charms, Naruto soon had the image training involved to create each effect down flat and could use them much easier. He had asked Kyuubi about learning more powerful charms, and Kyuubi had explained to him about how the techniques he had now were part of charm trees. When asked what they were, the fox had responded, "Charm trees are like a self-continuing technique. As you master and use more of each technique, they will grow stronger until a new technique blooms from the older one. You'll get an instinctive understanding of the technique when it blooms, and I should warn you, they can appear at any time, from the middle of a fight or in the middle of a meal, but they usually emerge in sleep and you'll be aware of them when you first awaken. This basically means that as long as you keep training, your skills will keep growing and you'll get progressively more powerful charms." This had answered most of the blonde's questions on charm training, and he couldn't wait to get to the shadow to start sowing a forest of these charm trees in his mind. After that, it was usually dark out and he'd return home to spend the remaining 4 hours divided among studying the Book of Rites and his other training scrolls and practicing his chakra control before heading to bed. He'd had about 5 or 6 more encounters with angry villagers, over half of them led by Haruno, and each had ended in the same way. With the offending villagers ending up curled up on the ground in a beaten and bloody heap. He'd even started taking after his sensei Anko in adding a little bit of subtle torture to the leaders and more annoying members, nothing they could prove, but painful nonetheless. He was surprised that no shinobi had made an attempt until Atari had told him that the Hokage had made it quite clear that any shinobi under his command who he found out was even bothering him now would face immediate execution without a trial at the Hokage's own hand. This has caused a stir from the civilian council, but they had no power over the matter, despite their protests. Besides these encounters, he'd had a few more interesting events happen as well. He'd met up with both Anko and Iruka. They'd both expressed their sympathies about him failing, and when he told both about everything that had happened and his recent change in the way he'd handled the villagers, both teachers were shocked and proud. Anko was glad Argaki had finally gotten something back for the shit he'd been forced to live through and was prouder than anything when she heard how he was dealing with the more annoying villagers who attacked him. She personally praised his sadistic side as her own creation through training. Both her fellow teacher agreed, but neither was happy about its creation and offered to teach him a few new torturing skill to help add to the villagers' pain. Naruto had politely refused, saying that if I did that then the idiots would try and get me executed for torturing civilians. Anko was forced to agree with the boy's logic but kept the offer open for after graduation. Haruka was also glad his little brother had finally gotten something good out of his life and, while not so happy about the sadistic parts, was glad he had decided to start defending himself. When both asked about the reason for his change in methods, he'd simply responded, "I'm not going to let myself be punished for something that I didn't do just to let a bunch of idiots feel better about themselves for their losses," was the blonde's only response. Both had agreed with the boy's logic. He was trying to meet up with his friends on Team Guy once a week to practice and hang out. Usually he'd spar with Wolf's Fang or practice using Moonlight with Tenten and practice his Taijutsu in Dalu form with Lee. He wanted to keep Goro a surprise in case of emergencies. As for his practice in using rites, the blonde had used a few more since the night he marked his clothing. The first one was the Mark of Territory. It was a rite that branded something as the property of an Uratha for all the spirits to know. He'd put the mark on both his locus and his apartment. It was a simple ritual that simply involved Naruto smearing his blood onto the object or the entrance to the place that belonged to him and the symbol of his auspicious moon while chanting under his breath. Then there was the Hallow Touchstone ritual. It allowed him to create storage devices that could hold essence for prolonged periods of time so that the Uratha could recharge his essence when there was no locus nearby. Naruto found this ritual to be extremely useful and created half a dozen touchstones for his use during missions. They were all crafted the same, a leather pouch that looked like a water skin with one of the large smooth stones that made up the bottom of the locust spring sewn into the bottom of the pouch. Creating them was a simple rite where all he did was take the finished touchstone into the water of the locust with him and sit at its center while meditating and then simply use his will to guide the essence into the touchstone. Recharging them was even simpler, all he had to do was let them rest inside the locust for a few hours before removing them. Last was the rite of spirit branding that allowed the spirits in the shadow to see the marks of his accomplishments. The ritual involved using his claws to mark his shoulders, arms and chest with the first tongue symbols of the 5 great virtues of Uratha: purity, honor, glory, wisdom and cunning. Purity represented his dedication to the oath of the moon and how well he followed it, and its mark glowed dimly along his body showing neutrality. Honor showed how he kept to his word and followed through on his obligations, and it glowed strongest over Naruto, showing how much the boy believed in following his word and code. Glory was his pride as a warrior and the resolve and strength which he carried with him, and he was surprised to see it glowing bright and strong around his body. Wisdom was his skill as a shaman, his ability to understand the spirit world, and it was the base of the crescent moon auspice, and it glowed faintly showing some progress, but not a lot. Lastly was cunning, Naruto's ability to think on his feet and how he could adapt to changes, and, like glory, Naruto was surprised by how bright the symbol glowed, but he put it as him being a trickster by nature. All in all, it had been a very productive and enjoyable month, and Naruto now felt, and Kyuubi agreed, he was ready for the shadow. He'd given his goodbyes to his friends and senseis, telling them he'd be back in about 2 months. Now all that was left was to tell the Hokage of his departure. The Hokage Tower. Hokage's office. Naruto entered the office to find the old man toiling away at the seemingly endless mountain of ultimate evil known as paperwork. Naruto, being a clever fox wolf, had already found the secret to defeating the evil threat, but had decided to keep it to himself until the old man earned his forgiveness. The boy passed by the shaking secretary. The woman had at first refused him entry, stating that the Hokage had no time to talk with demon filth. Naruto had given the woman 2 options. Announce him through the speaker or announce him in person after he threw her through the door. The woman, hearing of Naruto's new approach to dealing with those that treated him unfairly but not believing it until now, had quickly chosen the first option. The third looked up from his work and smiled at the boy's new appearance. He'd heard about and seen the changes in the boy's attitude. Though he wished the boy would try to solve the issues more peacefully, he accepted and approved of Naruto's decision to protect himself. As long as the boy didn't go on the offensive and attack villagers first, the boy had his support. The civilian council had been trying to get the boy arrested or executed for his actions, but each time their accusations were thrown out the window since each of the victims attacked first and Naruto only acted in a fashion to protect himself. It was causing the Hokage some major headaches, but he felt his actions were the least he could do to make it up to the boy. "Hello Naruto. I like the new look," the old man stated. "Thanks old man," Naruto said lightly. Old man was the closest the old cage could get to being treated like the past. It showed that while Naruto had forgiven the old man's actions, he still hadn't earned back the young man's trust. The third would know he'd gotten the blonde's complete forgiveness when he called him Ijiji again. So Naruto, I've got some good news. Given the facts surrounding your new abilities, I'd say we can convince the council to let you start your own clan. The Hokage stated happily. Naruto shook his head and said, Hokage-san, you are the leader of this village, and the council exists only to advise you. They can't approve or disapprove anything against your approval. If you want to give me the right to start my own clan, it's your decision, not theirs. You're the legendary Hiruzen the Professor, God of Shinobi, start acting like it. If you can't maintain control, then maybe it's time to pass on the hat. Naruto finished disapprovingly. The old man looked a little ashamed at this statement. The boy was right, he was acting like a weak-willed figurehead and not the village's supreme commander. He was the professor, damn it. It was time he started acting like it. You're right, my boy, I think it's about time I show those bastards on the civilian council who wears the hat in this village. The old man stated solidly. Naruto nodded, it was about time. Anyway, old man, we can discuss that when I get back. I just thought I'd give you some warning that I'm going to the shadow to do some training. The old Hokage nodded. Naruto had told him in the hospital how he would need to go to the spirit realm to gather these charms he used. How long will you be gone? Asked the old man. About 2 months, give or take. I should be back about a week before the academy starts again, but I may pop in and out every once in a while to get some supplies. The blonde answered, getting a nod from the old cage. Then I wish you the best of luck, my boy. The Hokage said, bidding the blonde farewell. Thanks, old man. The blonde said with a smile as he left. Naruto stood ready to leave. He had a pack along his back filled with the essentials for the 2 months of staying in the shadow. He had his touchstones at his belt, but Kyuubi had said they were only a precaution, since he recovered essence must faster in the shadow. He'd used a spirit catcher pouch over a dozen times in the month to stock up for the journey, and now had 3 pouches on his belt full of the crystals. His spear and bow were both sheathed on his body, ready for a fight. He stood calmly breathing in the surrounding air before beginning his journey. He'd already made sure that the local shadow was clear of spirits to interfere, using the 2 world's eye gift to investigate the surrounding area, and found no spirits nearby. Kyuubi had explained that shift from the physical world to the shadow was disorienting at best and stomach-lurching at worst, and it was a good idea to make sure nothing dangerous was nearby just in case. Naruto stood in the center of his locus at night underneath the light of a now gibbous moon. He felt the power surrounding him and, as Kyuubi instructed, forced it to spin and shift. After a few moments, Naruto felt his body began to swirl as well until in a small flash of silver, he was gone. Naruto shook himself after the sudden lurching of the sliding as Kyuubi had called and opened his eyes to find. Chapter 5. Shadow x Shinigami x Wolf Tribes. Naruto felt like he was going to vomit. Kyuubi had warned him that sliding into the shadow, even through the locus, could disorienting, but he felt like he'd just stepped out of a tornado. Damn, mentally cursed Naruto, if this how it feels sliding through a locus, I don't want to even think about how it would have been without one. If you did that, you'd be on the ground either vomiting or unconscious about now. Kyuubi responded before suggesting. Don't worry though, it gets easier with time and patience, but I wouldn't suggest trying to slide without a locus until the vertigo and nausea is settled into only a slight queasiness. Naruto had to agree, not only would it be uncomfortable, but it would leave him vulnerable if he was in a state like this, or worse, after a shift. As the blonde felt the world stabilize around him, he slowly opened his eyes to reveal the landscape of the shadow. Naruto had seen the general area a couple times before using the 2 world eye gift to examine this area, plus most of Konoha in general, over the past month while training for the trip. But seeing it through his charm and actually being there were 2 totally different things. Everything seemed to be darker and less focused, like looking through a dirty tinted piece of glass, but besides the color, everything else seemed to be taken to the extreme. The spring he stood in, that in the material world was only clean and bright, now practically glowed, and the normally cold water now felt icy. The clearing now seemed as flat as a plane of glass, and the grass seemed to have grown another inch. The trees that surrounded the clearing seemed taller and more angular. Everything in the entire place had a feeling of increased primal power. Like the forest had grown wilder and less tamed. It felt like it was more of a forest than it was before. Kyuubi decided to explain as her vessel analyzed his surroundings. This pup, Kyuubi stated, is what the shadow is. It's the world's twisted mirror, everything here is the world taken into the purest, most primal form. It is where emotion and memory impact the terrain just as much as physical factors do. The forest feels and looks more primal because, at its essence, that is what the forest is. A place of wild and primal energy. That is how the shadow knows and remembers it, and that is how it will remain until it is forced to change by the forces of the physical world. A place that is calming in the real world will be as serene as a monk's garden in this place. Naruto could only nod his head while taking it all in, before asking, what now? The Kyuubi though for a moment before answering, we should head into Konoha, there will be a lot of spirits congregating there, since that is where humans, creatures, and other sources of essence gather. The first place we should check is the Hokage's tower, since the leader of the village stays there, the ruler of this realm will probably take residence there as well. We can speak to him and pay the proper respects, and then ask to be allowed to use this place as a hunting ground for spirits to teach you gifts. Sounds like a plan to me. Agreed the blonde starting to leap toward the village. As Naruto approached Konoha he began to notice the place was affected in the same way as the forest. The buildings were taller and more threatening, the streets broader or narrower depending on where you stood, and the shadows of the buildings seemed longer and seemed to follow him. There were also some key differences between this place and the real Konoha. Vines and plants seemed to cover half the city's buildings, the areas uncovered seemed worn down and weathered, and several new buildings seemed to appear. Some buildings appeared the same as in the material world only a shade darker, but others were altered. Some appeared brighter and better well kept, and others seemed to have been twisted and turned monstrous. Kyuubi explained these events as resulting from the effect that emotions and memories could play on the shadow. The darker places were host to bad memories and dark events. Murders, beating, or other events of great darkness twisted the building into places of darkness and evil. Shallower and more depressing places were the result of events that had caused great sadness and sorrowful emotions. Naruto continued his journey to the tower as he studied the landscape and noticed something. Kyuubi, he asked, where is everybody? I thought you said this place would be filled with spirits. It is Naruto, Kyuubi answered, but remember what I told you about how spirits grow stronger. Sure, by eating other spirits. Oh. Exactly, they won't wander the streets like you humans do in case some spirit decides they'd make a good snack. They're in place where they draw their power, but we can find them. Once we get the lord of this spirit domain's approval they'll start to make themselves known. While most spirits don't like Uratha, they still know that they are useful allies. We'll also be able to find some on our own and challenge them, but that has to wait until we meet the head spirit. The young Uratha soon arrived at the Hokage's tower. It appeared similar to the normal one, but had a few key differences. It looked taller and more impressive than the original, and it seemed to look more like a tree than a tower. Naruto pushed open the door to find a room filled with spirits of all shapes and sizes. Naruto couldn't even begin to describe the variety of spirits he saw. Some appeared to be walking skeletons clothed in robes of silk and wearing hundreds of jewels. Great spirits. Some appeared to be living suits of samurai armor. Spirits of honor and battle. Still more appeared as giant books mounted on bodies made of paper. Knowledge spirits. There were dozens of different spirits moving around the room. As Naruto entered a room one of the living suits of armor approached and spoke to the boy, what is your business here Uratha? It questioned. Naruto was surprised that the spirit knew what he was. Kyuubi answered him spirits can tell you're in Uratha, since your body is a blend of spiritual essence and human chakra. Now answer him and show no fear or you'll get no respect from the spirits. Naruto nodded before returning a hard look at the armored spirit. I am here to pay my respects to the ruler of this domain and request his permission to gain spirit charms while in his domain. He answered calmly and evenly, showing respect without fear. Where can I find him? The voice suddenly rang out, I am here child of the Uratha, and I accept your greetings and grant you leave to seek your gifts within my realm, but first I have something to speak to you about. As the voice rang out the main doors into the Hokage's office popped open and out stepped one of the most terrifying creatures Naruto had ever seen. It was gigantic, at least 20 feet tall, and wore a giant white robe. Its skin was a light purple in color, and its hair was bone white. Its face was that of a traditional Hanya mask with blood-red horns sticking upward from its forehead, a pair of small blue eyes in pitch black, where the usual whites would be, and a mouth full of yellow fangs. Naruto's crescent glasses instantly activated and read out, Title: Shinigami, Devourer of Souls. Rank: Greater Incarnate. Nature: Death Spirit. Naruto's eyes widened at this information. This was the Shinigami, the Death God, and he was only a Greater Incarnate rank. Naruto instantly gave a low bow, showing his respect to the powerful spirit out of instinct more than anything. What do you wish of me Shinigami-sama? He asked. The Shinigami smiled, be calm child. I have two things to offer you. First is a gift for the part I have played in the misfortune that has surrounded your life. So I grant you the first gift of the path of lives ending. Said the spirit reaching out his hand to touch the blonde's forehead with one clawed finger. Instantly a new gift tree took root in the young blonde's mind and he learned the first of the ending gifts. Fear of death. Fear of death. Level 1 of the ending gift tree. Through using imagery of different means of death, this charm allows the wielder to see the method of death that their subject fears most. This allows them to gain insight on what the subject fears. It is very useful for intimidation tactics. Requires great concentration and can be mentally draining. Naruto shook his head to clear it from the sudden dizziness and lightheadedness that always followed the granting of a spirit gift before bowing to the Shinigami and saying, "I thank you for the gift Shinigami-sama, but I must ask, what part did you play in causing my life to become like it was?" asked the blonde curiously. The Shinigami looked at the blonde and answered, "It was through my summoning and power that the seal on your belly was forged, child. If your father hadn't summoned me, he could not have placed that seal on your stomach and sealed away the Kyuubi." Naruto nodded slowly before suddenly stopping and looking up at the Shinigami with wide eyes. "Wait. You said my father summoned you to seal the Kyuubi inside me, but that means..." The boy's voice trailed off as he looked at the Shinigami, who only nodded his head. "I'm the son of the fourth. My own father cursed me with this life." The Shinigami merely looked at the blonde. The boy looked at the spirit before saying calmly, "Would you excuse me for one moment?" The Shinigami only nodded his head and the blonde walked out of the tower slowly. After a moment, a sudden howl of "Curse you, father!" shook the tower. The roaring howl lasted for a moment before fading away and the blonde returned inside. He again bowed to the Shinigami before stating, "Thank you, I needed to get that off my chest." "You spoke of a second topic." The Shinigami nodded his head yet again before speaking, "Yes, spirits arrived here shortly after your change occurred seeking you. They wait an audience with you on top of the stone face of your father. They said they will meet you there soon after you arrive." The Shinigami said while pointing out a nearby window to the Hokage monument. "They asked me not to reveal who they are, but only the fact that they are ancient allies of your people. I can assure you of the honesty of this statement, since one of these spirits I know very well." Naruto nodded and bowed once more in thanks before leaving the tower and heading for the Hokage monument, wondering who these spirits are that wished to speak to him. Naruto soon arrived at the location the Shinigami had indicated and stood waiting for the spirits he had mentioned to arrive. As Naruto waited, he looked downward at the head of his father. How can a guy curse his own son to a life of being hated like that, Kyuubi? Naruto mentally asked his spirit guide. The Kyuubi answered softly, "From what I've learned of the fourth from your memories, the man was a very noble one. He probably couldn't ask anyone else to sacrifice their child if he couldn't sacrifice his own." The Kyuubi answered sadly. "Remember what the Hokage said about his dying wish, Naruto. The fourth wanted you to be seen as a hero for what you contain, but the fools in the village failed to follow that request. If you have to hate him for being an overly trusting and noble fool, but not as a man who threw away his son." Naruto thought for a moment. Kyuubi's answer sounded right, and the old man had mentioned the fourth's final wish for him to be seen as a hero. The man was a fool for trusting those bastards, but Naruto found he couldn't hate the man for his decision. It was a decision born of desperation, an overblown sense of honor and duty, and a misplaced faith in the village that he had called home. He couldn't hate his father for trusting the village he'd loved, even if they did betray his memory. "I guess I can understand how my old man felt, but I'm still going to beat his ass and when we meet again in the afterlife," the blonde mentally stated, with Kyuubi nodding her head in agreement before a frown crossed his face. "The old geezer probably knew about, guess it was another secret he thought he needed to keep for my own good," thought the blonde angrily. The Kyuubi decided to put in her own 2 cents worth. "True, but at least this one is understandable." She replied only to get a questioning response from Naruto of, "What do you mean, Kai?" "Think for a moment, Naruto." Kyuubi stated ruefully, "You don't get as powerful as your father was without making a lot of powerful enemies, both inside and outside your home. If those enemies had known you were his son, it would have put an even bigger target on your head." Naruto could only nod in understanding. It made a lot of sense. The old man couldn't even tell Naruto, since the boy may have let it slip when he was angry or sad, in hopes of getting some form of respect. "Yes, I can forgive the old man for that one, though." The blonde before an evil smile crossed his face, "though he doesn't need to know that right away." Kyuubi could only chuckle at that statement before saying, "You know, kid, I think you're more a fox than a wolf." Naruto only flashed her a foxy grin and chuckled to himself. Maybe she was right. Suddenly Naruto caught the scent of 5 large and powerful creatures approaching him. He was preparing to either fight or flee when their scents hit him full on. Each had a different scent, but all shared a common factor in it. It was a dark and musty scent, the scent, Naruto instinctively realized, of a wolf. "Guess they're the allies Shinigami-sama told me about," the blonde thought as he awaited the spirits to make himself known. He didn't have to wait long. Soon the 5 wolves entered into Naruto's line of sight. They were huge, each stood taller than most of the building in the village, and they all had the basic forms of wolves, but that is where the similarities ended. The first to enter was the largest of the group, standing a good 330 feet and covered in thick brown fur that didn't seem to cover the large number of scars visible beneath and through the fur. One of the creature's eyes was closed with a large scar, showing it had lost the eye in battle. The beast gave off an aura of power and strength, a true warrior in every shape and meaning of the word. His scent was that of blood and battle mixed with the thick scent of a wolf. Naruto's crescent glasses quickly read off. His title. Fenris Destroyer Wolf. Rank. Lesser Incarnate. Nature. Werewolf spirit. The next to emerge was about the same height as the rest at about 300 feet and covered in deep red fur that looked like it was made of steel or iron. His body was solid and stiff but still held the grace of a hunting beast. Its fangs and claws caught Naruto's attention. They weren't the normal fangs and claws of a beast but looked like polished and edged swords instead. The creature gave off an aura of calm despite its obviously dangerous appearance and creativity like that of an inventor or artist. His scent mixed a thick wolf scent with that of metal and machines. Naruto's crescent glasses read out. Idol. Sagramur, Red Wolf. Rank. Lesser Incarnate. Nature. Metal Wolf Spirit. Next to emerge from the surrounding woods was a wolf that stood slightly smaller than the rest of her kin at only about 280 feet. Her, Naruto could tell she was female by her scent, was pitch black with small dots of glowing white that made her look like a piece of the night sky come down to the earth. Her eyes startled Naruto the most. They were simply pools of glowing silver, no pupil, no whites, no irises, just pure silver. Her scent smelled of dusk and shadow mixed with the smell of a wolf. She gave off an aura of subtlety and silence, just like a thief or a ninja. Again Naruto's glasses gave off information. Idol. Hikain Black Wolf. Rank. Lesser Incarnate. Character. Shadow Wolf Spirit. Next was a wolf with that stood slightly larger than the rest but not as large as Fenris at about 320 feet tall. His fur was pure snowy white and seemed to be coated in a constant layer of frost that seemed to crack and fall away as he moved only to reform moments later. His fangs and claws were icicles and his breath frosted in the air like it was the middle of winter. His aura was that of confidence and strength, the aura of a leader and commander. His scent was the sharp cold and frosty scent of a winter storm mixed with the strong scent of a wolf. Naruto's glasses read off. Idol. Skalus Winter Wolf. Rank. Lesser Incarnate. Character. Weather Wolf Spirit. The last wolf to emerge was the oddest one Naruto had ever seen. She was at least as tall as her siblings standing at about 300 feet but then she grew completely different. Instead of fur she was covered in a light gray mist that was partially translucent and beneath it was only a giant wolf skeleton. Her eyes were hollow black pits filled with only a dim red glow. She radiated an aura of endless calm and a frightening silence. She felt like death itself. Her scent was that of grave soil and mist mixed together with only a lingering trace of the wolf scent. Naruto's glasses glowed a final time. Idol. Camutus Death Wolf. Rank. Lesser Incarnate. Character. Death Wolf Spirit. She must be the one that the Shinigami knew, considering they're both death spirits. Naruto concluded mentally. The wolf spirits gathered in a half circle surrounding the boy's front as they each took a moment to study the blonde before Death Wolf spoke. So you, little pup, are the last of our father's Uratha children. Spoke the wolf spirit in an ancient and whispery voice. He doesn't appear to be much of a wolf's siblings. Spoke Destroyer Wolf. His voice was rough and harsh. Appearances can be very deceiving, elder brother. Spoke Black Wolf. Her voice was sibilant and soft. You would know, wouldn't you, slyest of sisters? Argued Red Wolf. His voice was somewhat metallic and grating. Black Wolf growled at her sibling spirit but before she could speak Winter Wolf broke into the argument, his voice filled with authority. Enough of this bickering, my siblings, we came here with a purpose and now we need to fulfill it. The other spirits nodded their heads at their sibling's statement. Red and Black Wolf both growled and glared at each other but kept their tongues in check. If I may be so bold to ask, but what is this purpose that you have called me here to speak of? I was told that you were ancient allies of my kind but I was not told how or why. Asked Naruto, his voice calm and respectful to the mighty spirits that stood before him. Ah, yes. I had almost forgotten you, young pup. Stated Winter Wolf while returning his attention to the pup that stood before them. You see, youngling, we too are Father Wolf's children, only we were the children of his time with other spirits and not mortal flesh. When your ancestors first slew Father Wolf in their foolish pride and Mother Luna first took them under her wing, your ancestors sought us out and asked for our aid in accomplishing their self-appointed task. 3 of our siblings refused a request outright, but we 5 each agreed to test their skills and see if they were worthy of our patronage. Those who passed our initiations began the 5 great tribes. Mine became the Storm Lords, leaders of the werewolf people. They took responsibility as the guides and political leaders of the other tribes. Spoke the Icy Wolf, and each of his siblings spoke after him speaking of their own tribes. Mine were the Blood Talons. They were the fiercest of the Uratha warriors, deadliest in combat, and most honorable on the battlefield. They were the greatest soldiers to have walked among the Uratha. Spoke Destroyer Wolf, his voice heavy with pride. Mine were the hunters in darkness. They were the stealthiest and most subtle of our kin. Much like the ninja of this age. They were tasked with stalking and hunting the enemies of the Uratha and Father Wolf and protected the sacred places of the tribes. Spoke Black Wolf. Mine were the Iron Master. They were the creators and inventors of the tribes and the protectors of the cities. They lived apart from the others, preferring the cities to the forests of the past. They were the protectors of their territory and the guardians of the homes of the tribes. Spoke Red Wolf. Lastly were the children I took in, the Bone Shadows. They were the lore keepers of the Uratha and the ones who dealt with the spirit world most often. They took the jobs of interacting with the spirit world, keeping the balance from within the shadow, while the others kept the physical in balance. Finished Death Wolf. Now young Uratha, spoke Winter Wolf, again taking the lead for his siblings in the discussion, the children we once protected are gone to a single member, and our tribes long forgotten to the annals of time. You, however, offer us a chance to regain the glory that we once held. So we come to you with an offer, last of the Uratha. We once again offer our patronage to you, and so we ask whose tribe shall you serve? Asked the ancient wolf. Naruto thought for a moment and remembered Luna's advice, the 5 wolf brothers will seek you out. Respect them and offer all 5 the honor of your clan in the future, and you will gain strong allies and teachers. A grin split Naruto's mouth as he began to speak again, honorable wolf siblings, I have another offer to propose. Instead of serving only one of your tribes, my clan can serve all 5. In the physical world those who inherit unique abilities like the ones I have gained are allowed to form clans. I offer my future clan's honor and respect to all 5, so that they may become the greatest leaders, this said with a look to Winter Wolf, warriors, this to Destroyer, hunters, to Black, guardians, to Red, and lore masters this to Death, among all the clans of the world. The 5 great wolf spirits seemed to be surprised by this statement, and each looked to the others, before hungry grins passed along their wolfish snouts. This pup has guts. Was the shared thoughts of the wolves. In a silent discussion among themselves, the wolf spirits came to an agreement and Winter Wolf spoke again, you are brave pup, a trait valued among all the tribes. We agree, but you must pass each of our tests in kind. Do this and we will each bestow upon your 2 blessings, one a gift and the other a fetish of our own crafting. If you are capable of passing all 5, we will grant you a final honor. One we have bestowed upon none in the past. I agree, what comes first? Naruto agreed, a determined look settling in his eyes. Since I tested his ancestors first among us when they came, I believe it only makes sense that I test him first. Stated Destroyer Wolf. The other wolf spirits nodded in agreement as Destroyer stepped forward. What is your test mighty Fenrisur asked Naruto. Mine is a simple test, stated the war wolf as he began to shrink and compact himself to the size of bull. Simply this. Fight me. He finished and launched himself at the blonde. Chapter 6. Tests X rewards X wolf. What is your test mighty Fenrisur asked Naruto. Mine is a simple test, stated the war wolf as he began to shrink and compact himself to the size of bull. Simply this. Fight me. He finished and launched himself at the blonde. Cliffinger no Jutsu. Release. Naruto again thanked Luna for his newly enhanced reflexes as he quickly leapt to the side and rolled away from the now bull-sized wolf's lunge. Okay Naruto mentally instructed himself as he moved, how the hell am I supposed to beat a war spirit that's on the same level as a cage? He thought desperately. Remember Naruto-kun, he said you only had to fight him not beat him. Reminded Kyuubi, the fox had stated she couldn't help him in the tests, but that didn't mean she couldn't offer him her support. Right, so I just have to fight him and not worry about winning. Mentally agreed the were-ninja. Oh well, if he wants to fight like a beast I'll match him fang to fang. Softly growled out the wolf ninja as he charged his foe while shifting into his ursal form. His body expanded as his lupin features overrode his human one. His arms and legs distorted into powerful limbs, each ending in a large strong paw and each paw armed with a set of razor-sharp claws. His shoulders expanded to become stocky blocks and his head became a massive wolf's head, complete with a fanged maw, filled with a nice set of sharp fangs. His body grew and distended until he stood about 5 feet tall at the shoulders on all fours and was about 7.5 feet long from his newly formed tail to his now wolfish snout and was covered in a coat of light brown fur with a few streaks of golden blonde going down his back and neck. Most shocking were his eyes, the natural cerulean blue of his Hishu state, merged with the canine yellow that had overshadowed his eyes during the first change to create a bright and venomous green. Naruto had become a wolf the size of light riding horse, the war beast or near wolf form. Herschel. And. Think a supersized wolf, but a little blockier for the appearance. As Naruto's new wolfish senses kicked in, he continued his charge on 4 limbs with his fastest form's full speed. Howling out a battle cry Naruto lunged at his opponent, fangs bared to bite into the larger wolf's neck. Instead of dodging the attack, Fenrisur turned and rammed his shoulder into the leaping were-ninja's chest. This sent the blonde flying backward until he landed and rolled on the ground before quickly getting back onto his paws and charging forward again. The other wolf ran forward to meet the charge head-on. They met in flurry of claws and fangs. Fenris launched a massive claws the young wolf's head, but Naruto moved under it to launch a lunging bite to his foe's neck. Fenrisur quickly backpedaled away from the lunge and countered with a lunge of his own at Naruto's side with both clawed forelimbs. Naruto barely avoided the deadly lunge, but still earned a trio of claw marks to his side, but was able to counter with a clawed swipe of his own, directly to the older wolf's snout, leaving a trio of fresh red lines along the older wolf's already scared face. The two broke the confrontation for a moment to lick their respective wounds. The moment quickly passed as Naruto lunged forward yet again to meet his foe, he lead with another lunging bite to the throat. Fenris moved to counter the same way as before, but this time the lunge was only a feint, as the wolf ninja jumped to the side before he finished his lunge, and the older wolf had begun his counter-strike, directly into the old wolf's blind side from his missing eye. In his new position, Naruto barreled forward and was about to bite out the wolf spirit's throat, until Fenris's paw slammed into the side of his head, sending the younger wolf flying backward from the force of the blow. Rolling on the ground at the end of his flight, Naruto shakily rose to his legs and growled at the old wolf god. The old battle-scarred wolf god studied the young werewolf for a moment before smiling, at least Naruto thought it was a smile you can't really tell on a wolf's snout, and let out a growling chuckle while saying, "Enough young pup, you've passed my test." This caused Naruto to stop before he could even finish preparing to charge forward again, and he asked in the canine tongue, "What do you mean, mighty Fenris? Our battle is not yet over." This caused the war wolf to laugh. "Pup," he stated, "it took your ancestors over 100 warriors to fight me when I first created the Blood Talon tribe, and even then I fought at reduced strength. Now do you honestly think you could finish a fight with me one-on-one?" Naruto thought for a moment before reverting to his Dalu form, just in case he had to fight or move quickly in one of the other challenges, before answering, "Your point is well made, mighty Fenris Dono, but, if I may ask, how did I pass your test?" asked the curious werewolf. Fenris returned to his full size and looked down at the young pup and stated, "You passed because you fought. You didn't run to try and form a plan or hide to ambush me, you simply fought me. Anyone who doesn't have the courage to face my challenge head-on like you did does not deserve to bear the title Blood Talon. You also fought both with fierce strength and a keen mind. At first you merely charged and fought without any true plan, a worthy enough act, but you were able to form a combat plan on your own during the heat of battle, and that marks a true Blood Talon warrior." Finished the ancient warrior before speaking again, "Now young Blood Talon, you must swear our tribe's oath." "What is the oath, Fenris Dono?" asked the blonde. "Our oath is this, Didi had trato at vos non recipero, or offer no surrender that you would not accept. To follow my oath you must do one thing, and one thing alone. Never give up. As long as blood flows through your body, as long as breath passes through your lungs, as long as the heart of a Blood Talon beats in your chest, and as long as the cause is worthy, never give up. Do you accept my oath?" Naruto merely smirked at the older wolf, remembering a lesson Iruka had taught him, and stated calmly, "If that is the oath of a Blood Talon, then I have been one since the day of my birth. I never give up, I never back down, and I never break my word. That is my ninja way. So I gladly accept the oath of the Blood Talons with honor." Finished the blonde. The destroyer wolf only grinned and stated, "Then accept these two gifts, youngling. First, the seed of my personal path of charms as your kind called them, the path of war and battle." With that, Fenris placed the tip of his massive paws onto the blonde's forehead and imparted the first gift of the battle path. Visage of Fenris. Visage of Fenris. Level 1 of the battle gift tree. Through focusing on an image of Fenris, the Uratha is capable of drawing on a connection with the wolf to add some of the destroyer wolf's intimidating visage to his own. His eyes will blaze with primal fury and flame, and the snarl of the great wolf itself will appear on his face. Most foes will flinch back in fear of the werewolf halting their actions for a moment. This technique requires no essence, but requires great concentration and willpower to use, and could be mentally draining if used too often. As Naruto recovered from the assimilation of his newest gift tree, Fenris held out his other paw before the boy and dropped a pair of objects at his feet. As Naruto looked down, he saw a pair of bracelets resting at his feet. Both were simple metal circles about 2 or 3 inches thick and the color of dried blood. As Naruto picked them up and placed them on his wrists just below where his own bracers began, Fenris spoke again, "Those are the Blood Talons, named in honor of our tribe. Merely focus on them and will them to activate, and you will see how they earned their names." Naruto did as instructed, and after a moment's concentration a drop of blood fell from each band. As Naruto watched, the drops fell connected by other droplets to form a chain connected to the bracelets. As the chain formed, the first droplet extended and changed, it grew into a long handle, then a claw-like blade burst from the surface of one side of each handle. After only a moment, Naruto held a matched pair of kusarigama in each hand by the sickle end, with the chains linking them back to the bracelets. The handles appeared to be made of wood the color of dried blood, and the claw-shaped blades of the sickle seemed to be made of a metal with a reddish tint to it and appeared to be double-edged. The chains seemed to be made of the same reddish material as the blade, and each link was made to appear to a single blood droplet. Naruto stared at his new weapon in amazement for a moment before testing it. He'd learned the basics of using the kusarigama from Tenten, and he figured that these were designed to be used only with the edged end. Twirling one of the sickles over his head on a slightly extended piece of chain for a moment, he then released it at a nearby tree. The back of the blade easily cut through the thick bark of tree, and as Naruto pulled back the chain began to quickly recede back into the bracelet. This caused the handle to fly quickly toward him, but instead of flying at a random point on his body as it usually would with a sudden lurch, it flew straight into his waiting hand. Naruto could only let loose a low whistle. I'm going to need to get Tenten to sell me a scroll on how to wield twin-chain sickles," thought the grinning werewolf. "At least I don't have to worry about money since I've been able to save most of the spending money I've received over my life, since no one will sell me anything other than the essentials, and even then I sometimes have to get the Hokage to force them to. Even when they are willing to sell me stuff they try to overcharge me at least twice or even 3 times what it's worth until I threaten to report them to the old man." After a moment Naruto willed the weapons to return to their inactive state, causing the sickle to reduce to a small amount of blood that soon flowed back into the bracers. He then turned to Fenrisur. "Thank you Fenrisur Dono, I will wield them with the respect and honor such a weapon deserves," he said with a box. Fenrisur gave the young werewolf a short nod of respect and acceptance and spoke the ancient salute of his tribe, "May your fangs and claws forever stay sharp young Suther Anseth," finishing with the first tongue name of his tribe before returning to his seat among the semicircle of the 5 wolf siblings. After he sat down the next wolf decided to step forward to give him her test. That wolf was Hikainur, the black wolf. She slowly strolled forward and stood in front of the young werewolf. She spoke in her soft, sibilant voice, "Are you ready for my test now young Uratha?" Naruto bowed his head, "I am ready cunning Hikainur. What is your test?" "Like my brother I too have a simple test. I will hide within the woods behind us, you simply have to find me and touch me without letting me escape," stated the black wolf, and with that said she disappeared in a whirlwind of shadows while her whispery voice seemed to echo on the wind, "You have until the dawning of the sun." Naruto looked above his head, from what Anko and Iruka had taught him the position of the moon meant he had about 5 hours. Time to get to work. Was his determined thought. I think I should use my Urhin form, not only is it fast and has the best senses, but it's smaller and stealthier than my Urshel form. But that thought Naruto began to once again shift, only this time instead of growing his body began to contort and shrink into a smaller size. After a moment in Naruto's place stood a normal-sized wolf with light brown hair, except for a set of golden streaks along its back and neck and a pair of bright green eyes. This was Urhin the wolf form. The now transformed blonde leapt into the woods and began his search while using all the tricks Anko-sensei had taught him for staying hidden, combined with his new wolf instincts for hunting. 3 hours later, the hours ticked by quickly as Naruto searched for the shadow wolf, but the blonde couldn't seem to find her. Even with his enhanced nose and eyes he couldn't catch a glimpse of the older wolf's beard. His nose had led him to a general area that he's sure the black wolf was still hidden in, but he still couldn't determine it any better with his nose, and his eyes just couldn't find her among the shadows. "Damn it," mentally screeched the frustrated Wereblin from still within his wolf form, "why can't I find her? I've been using my nose or my eyes, but I can't seem to detect that's it. I've just been using my nose and eyes, I'm a wolf now, and wolves use more than their senses of sight and smell to find their prey, they also rely on their ears too and combine them all at once. To find her I've got to use my improved ears, nose, and eyes all at once." With that thought the blonde began his search anew. The effect of trying to use all 3 of his newly enhanced senses at the same time was confusing to say the least, but after another hour of practice the blonde had it down, the searching area had been narrowed down yet again, and finally he was nearing his prey. He had found her hiding place in the woods. It was a large waterfall that had a cave hidden behind the fall itself, not large, but an excellent hiding spot since it blocked sight, sound, and smell all at once. Naruto had only been lucky enough to find out she was in there because this particular section of the forest was one of his personal favorite spots to come to relax and think, and he had used this particular hiding spot himself a time or two to escape the angry mobs that sometimes formed to chase him down when he younger. He knew the area was too small for the full-sized wolf to use, but Naruto presumed she had shrunk herself down like Fenrisur had in their battle. Now all that was needed was a final lunge. Naruto positioned himself within a few feet to the side of the cave and shifted into his Urshel form. He would need every bit of speed he could get for this strike, and Urshel was the swiftest of the forms he possessed. His Urhin form swiftly expanded, each piece growing and shaping itself into a larger, stronger version of its former form. Now the werewolf tensed every muscle in his body, building up all the strength he could. Got to wait for just the right now, thought the were ninja as all his senses suddenly clicked as his muscles met their maximum limit and he shot forward like a bullet. He pierced the veil of water that hid the cave from view while and rammed directly into the hiding Hikainur. "Found you?" howled the excited young wolf as he reverted back into the Dalu form yet again. "So you did pup, so you did," stated Black Wolf while giving the pup an approving nod. "Now we should rejoin the others so you can take your next test." With that the two were surrounded by another tornado of shadows and disappear, only to reappear a moment later in the spot where the other wolf siblings lay in waiting. "I take it the pup passed your test," stated Red Wolf. "Indeed, dear brother, he is quite the clever hunter," agreed Black Wolf with a smug grin, getting a blush from the blonde. "I was just lucky," stated the embarrassed blonde. "You chose a hiding spot that I used myself in my younger days. If you'd chosen a different location I might not have found you. Luck is just as important to a hunter as any other skill, youngling," responded Hikaner before she became serious again. "Now young Uratha, you must take my tribal oath. Primissum haud sanctus locus en vestri tractus existo lido, or let no sacred place in your territory be violated. To follow my oath you must protect what is precious to you no matter what. Guard your home, your kin, your family with all you have and hunt down all who would dare threaten them, and you will follow my oath. You have my word Hikaner Dono," answered the blonde with a bow, thinking that he was always protective of those he viewed as precious, so this vow wouldn't change much. "Then I grant you the first gift of the path of the hunter," stated Hikaner as she extended a paw and again touched the blonde's forehead, granting him the first gift of the stalking gift tree. Night Sight. Night Sight. Level 1 of the stalking gift tree. Allows the wielder to enhance their eyes to be able to see in utter darkness, as if it were filled with the bright light of the full moon. Note. Doesn't affect supernatural or jutsu-based darkness. No essence cost for activation, only minor focus required. I also give you this fetish of my own crafting. It is called the Shadow's Cloak," stated the ancient wolf god, and with that a long piece of black cloth fell into Naruto's hands. "I would have preferred a trench coat to a cloak," thought the blonde, but I guess his thought was stopped mid-sentence as the piece of cloth began to reshape itself into a long black trench coat with wolf and moon symbols emblazoned on it in silver. Black Wolf smiled at the young werewolf's stunned expression before speaking. "I see you've already found the first of the cloak's powers. It can change into any piece of clothing its owner desires with but a thought. The cloak also possesses two other abilities as well. First, you can store any item of reasonable size into the inner lining of the garment by merely pressing it into the area, and it will be hidden from detection, and the storage space within them is nearly limitless. To recall a specific item, merely concentrate on the image of that item as you reach inside the coat and you will grasp it. The second power is that as long as you remain immobile while wearing it, you can merge into the shadows that surround you, but this is broken by even the slightest movement. I should also mention that it is nearly indestructible. Any burns, tears or rips will restore themselves by daybreak the next day, and even if completely destroyed, it will restore itself from its owner's shadow at the next dawn." Naruto thought for a moment as he thought of the application of this new gift. He could carry any number of weapons on his person and no one could detect them on him, or he could carry messages and packages without anyone ever being able to find them. Add to that he could hide in waiting without any risk of detection, as long as there were sufficient shadows. It was truly a tool designed for a shadowy hunter or assassin. He bowed his head to Hikaner and stated, "Thank you Hikaner Dono, I will bring honor to the hunters in shadows, as long as I live. Be strong young Menina. Hunt forever in the shadows of your prey and let none escape your fangs," responded the Black Wolf as she returned to her seat in the semicircle. The next to step forward was Sagramur, the Red Wolf. Naruto bowed to the Great Spirit as it stepped forward and stated, "I am ready for whatever test you give me." "Good pup, then my test is but one simple question. You face an opponent whose power far exceeds your own, while you stand in unfamiliar territory and are unable to use many of your gifts. How do you win?" "If I can't overpower them I'd trick them," answered Naruto quickly. "I've never been extremely smart, but I'm quite clever, so I'd try to use whatever came to my hand as a tool. If I don't know my surroundings I'd use whatever I found and try to keep my options open. If I wasn't able to use all my abilities I'd use the ones I had left to either distract my foe or find a way to recover the lost ones." "Is that your final answer pup?" asked Red Wolf incredulously. "Hi," stated a now nervous Naruto. "Then you pass," stated the smirking wolf. An Iron Master's true strength lies not in their speed and strength, but in their ability to adapt and think on their feet. In answering that question you showed an ability to use your mind in the true way of an Iron Master. Now you must swear to our tribal oath. Veneratio vestri tractus en totus res, or honor your territory in all things. Like the oath of the hunters in darkness you must protect your chosen territory, but simply not just that which is precious to you alone, but the territory as a whole. Seek to protect and improve it, build it up to be greater than it was before, and honor its ideals. I humbly accept the oath of the Iron Masters and swear to protect and follow their ideals," stated a bowing Naruto. Konoha was his home and his territory, which meant he'd have to protect it all, not just the parts and people he cared for. That didn't mean he was going to protect those bastards that tried to harm him, though, after all they were wrought to the ideals of equality and acceptance that were a basis of what Konoha stood for. "Excellent. Now accept your gifts. First, the first step on the path material shape and form," stated the wolf as it reached out a sword-like claw to touch Naruto's head, imparting the first gift of the shaping path. Straighten. Straighten. Level 1 of the shaping gift tree. Through a simple touch and infusion of essence into an object while focusing their mind on an image of a simple straight line, the wielder can will any piece of non-organic material to straighten and smooth out, removing any kinks, warps, folds, or other imperfections. It could repair a bent sword, smooth away dents in armor, or restore a crushed object as long as it remained in one piece. Useful for either repairs, by restoring damage, or sabotage, by unbending and straightening parts or tools that needs bends like wheels or pipes. As the red wolf removed its paw from Naruto's forehead, he dropped a necklace onto his neck. Naruto took a moment to analyze it. It was a simple iron thread decorated with fangs, claws, and small bits of fur wound into knots. What amazed Naruto was that every piece was crafted from what appeared to be finely polished steel. Even the fur knots appeared to actually be an unusual type of steel wire or string. That is the Iron Wolf Talisman. As long as that necklace is wrapped around your neck, your skin will harden to assume some of the protective qualities of steel. Granted, you won't be able to take a sword slash without bleeding, but nicks and scratches won't even affect you. Also, it will harden your claws and fangs in your Goru, Urshel, and Urhin forms to be as strong as steel. Stated Sagramur. Naruto thought for a moment. It would be a useful gift to have in a fight. Most ninja didn't wear any more armor than a bit of mesh over their vitals. Even if the armor boost from the necklace wasn't awe-inspiring, it would still put him in a better situation than most ninja. As for his claws and fangs, it meant even if he didn't have a blade, though that seemed unlikely given how many weapons he'd gained so far, he'd be able to match an armed opponent blade for blade, or should I say blade for claw. He once again bowed to his new tribal spirit and stated, "I thank you for the gift Sagramur Dono, and I vow to do the Iron Masters of the past proud. Stand strong and resolute as steel, Farsal Lul." Speaking the ancient salute of his tribe, completed with the first tongue name, before returning to the semicircle for the next sibling to step forward. That sibling was Skolasur, the winter wolf. As the icy wolf approached, Naruto couldn't help but shiver, but if it was due to the cold the great wolf generated or the equally icy look that filled the wolf's cold blue eyes, Betty bit down the urge and stood strong. "I test young Uratha as one of your endurance." The Stormlords prided themselves on their ability to withstand anything that nature could throw against them. "I would use my power to trap you within a blizzard of ice and snow. You must stay within for 1 hour without fleeing, and when it is over you must stand strong. Are you ready?" "I am," stated Naruto. He'd always prided himself on his near-endless stamina, so he believed he could pass this test. "Then the test shall begin." Then Winter Wolf drew in a deep breath and released it in the form of a freezing gale of ice and snow that soon began to spin around Naruto, forming a dome of ice and snow. Within the newly formed dome Naruto stood in the cold. His body already beginning to feel the numbness the icy winds brought, but he stood resolute. "I can do this," he mentally growled. "I've lived through beating, attacks, and everything else those bastards in the village could throw at me, so a little snow isn't gonna stop me." With that thought he began to breathe in and out, slowly and surely, letting his body remain calm. As the hour came and went, Skolasur finally released his snowstorm. As he breathed in again the snow and ice began to flow back into him. Standing in the center of the storm, the exact same spot as where he began was one Naruto Uzumaki. His hair and clothing showed bit of ice and frost on them, his breathing was slightly heavy, and his skin was now slightly pink due to the exposure, but otherwise the boy seemed to be fine. As he shook of the last bit of cold and numbness that had entered his body, Naruto couldn't help but notice that it had faded quicker than he thought possible. He briefly wondered if Skolasur was somehow helping with his recovery, but shook the thought away as the Winter Wolf began speaking again. "Congratulations, you have passed my trial, so be proud youngling. For now you must only swear to my tribal oath sino nemo arbitro arbiter velix golo vestri infirmitas, or allow no one to witness, or to tend your weakness. To follow my oath you must stand strong and firm in all your decisions, never doubt the choices you've made, never falter on the path you've chosen, and be proud in who you are. This doesn't mean you must be stubborn or pompous without listening to others, but you must have faith in yourself." Naruto nodded. It had always been a part of his nature to never look back on the decisions he's made in his life. "I take the oath of the Stormlords and vow to uphold it as long as I draw breath. Then I grant you the gifts of the Stormlords. First, the first gift of the Path of Authority, the Path of the Alpha." Like the others, Winter Wolf's talon reached out and touched Naruto's forehead, and in a flash of icy light, the gift of the Alpha tree was planted. Sense guilt. Sense guilt. Level 1 of the Alpha Gift Tree. By locking eyes with another being, channeling essence, and drawing on the piercing gaze of Winter Wolf himself, a character is capable of sensing if the target holds any guilt on their conscience. The exact source of the guilt is impossible to detect with this charm, but by channeling even more essence into the gaze, the wolf can get a general idea of what the guilt is focused on, such as a crime against their family, or a crime against a stranger, or a crime against Konoha. As Winter Wolf removed his talon from the boy's head, a blade dropped to the floor. It was still sheathed in a light grey leather sheath, but the handle was of ivory bone and it had 3 small gems set into it. A bright green emerald, a deep blue sapphire, and a golden garnet. As Naruto unsheathed the blade from the leather he noted it didn't have a guard, but rather the blade jutted down to block the hand from sliding forward, while the top held only a slight bump. As the blade came fully out Naruto let out a low whistle as he examined the blade. It was a broad, single-edged blade with only a slight curve to it and a slightly rounded but still sharp point. Think a machete grown to the size of a longsword or katana for the basic build of the blade. The blade itself was inscribed with runes and symbols in the first tongue that Naruto knew all referred to the power of storms, lightning, wind, and rain. Naruto could almost feel the power emanating from the blade. Note to self. Add a Kenjutsu scroll to the shopping list. That pup is the Storm Fang, an ancient weapon of the Storm Lords. Not only is the blade sharper and truer than any normal sword, it also holds a few other secrets. Through concentrating your essence into the blade you can either wreathe the blade in a sheath of crackling lightning or cutting wind, or to release an emanation made of lighting, water, or wind to strike at your foes from a distance. A weapon truly fit for one of our tribe. Stated a proud winter wolf. Naruto resheathed the blade and hung it on loop on his belt where the blade rested easily. He then bowed and stated, "I am honored by your gifts Colasur Dono, and I will do my best to prove myself worthy of them." The icy wolf bowed his head in acknowledgement before stating, "Stand strong in the face of any storm that crosses you young Immoner," stated the wolf in a calm voice. As he returned to the semicircle the final one of Naruto's testers came forward, Kamudasur, the death wolf. As the wolf slowly moved forward to sit in front of the blonde he calmly asked, "What is your test wise Kamudasur?" "Riddles," breathed the most ancient of the wolf siblings. A bone shadow's strength is defined not by strength but by guile, nor by intelligence, but wisdom. They are the ones who hold these attributes above all others. Naruto nodded his head slowly and waited for the ancient spirit to begin. What creature walks upon 4 legs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the twilight and lies dead at night? Started death wolf. Naruto thought for a moment a creature that lives for a single day was rare, but then the thought hit him, what if the times of day are referencing something else? As Anko had inscribed into his head, never take anything at face value. That still left the ideas bubbling in his head until an idea hit him. Your man, who crawls on all 4s as an infant in the morning of their lives, walk on 2 legs in their adulthood or afternoon, and uses a cane as a 3rd leg in the twilight years of their lives. This is actually the riddle of the Sphinx in ancient mythology. I don't any of that either. Correct. Loyal brother, fearsome friend, leader, follower, loner and many more faces you wear. Brothers to servants of man, kin to trickster kings. Raise your voice to your silver lover hidden in the endless night. What are you? She asked. Again Naruto thought for a moment to consider the riddle until again he thought of a solution. You are a wolf. He stated calmly. Loyal beyond anything to your pack, fearsome in all regards, a leader or a follower depending on your place in the pack, alone if you choose, and many other ways to live. Brother to dogs who serve man and kin to foxes who are the royalty of the tricksters. Correct? Now for the final riddle. Loving mother always watching from above, her eyes slowing blinking over the season's course, but even closed she hides above, sometimes closer and sometimes farther, but always watching over your wayward children's path. What are you? Asked Kamudasur. Naruto was again lost in thought until he glanced up at the sky and noticed something which brought a grin to his face. Your mother Luna, the moon. He answered, she always watches over us from above, and though her eye closes by going through its different phases throughout a month, she is always there. She comes closer and farther away during the equinoxes of the moon, but she will always watch over us. Correct for the final time young wolf. Now for the final part merely swear my oath. Per salvo sulam phasmidis en pious, or pay each spirit in kind. This oath means you must follow the spirits in regards to the way they treat you. If they attack you, strike at them, if they offer you aid and you accept, return the service. I believe an old human saying that is similar is, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Finished death wolf. Naruto nodded his head, it seemed a fair deal. I take the oath of the bone shadows as my own and swear to follow it with my life. Then take these gifts with you. First is the first gift of the path of wisdom and insight, 2 things that our tribe values above all others. Stated the ancient wolf as she reached out a bony claw to touch the blonde's forehead, and in a dull gray flash, the first gift of the insight chain was planted. Sense malice. Sense malice. Level 1 gift of the insight gift tree. Allows the user to sense the negative emotions of those he's near, at least close enough to catch their scent, so usually those in the same room. This power does not detect all negative emotions, just those strong enough to have a grip on a being's mind. Affects humans and spirits and allows wielder to detect spirits whose nature reflects these negative emotions. Usually the wield can only detect the basic type of emotion the person is emitting like anger, sorrow, or envy, but by taking time and channeling essence, the wielder can get a vague idea, though they are tinted from a wolf's perspective, like my mate betrayed me or my packmate died. As she withdrew her paw she dropped 4 rings onto the ground in front of Naruto. As Naruto picked each up he noticed they each had wolf head on the top, snout facing outward with the jaws open like it was preparing to grasp a jewel or something. Naruto put one onto each of his ring fingers and the other 2 on each index finger. As he continued to examine them Kamudasur spoke again, these are called the right sheaths. Each can hold a single rite after the preparations and rituals are done to release it at another time of your choosing. Naruto nodded his head as he thought of his newest gift. They could be quite useful. The rites he'd already learned all had the same major weakness of taking a great deal of time to cast or prepare, but with these rings, he could prepare some of the more useful ones ahead of time for emergencies. Overall a very useful gift. He thought as he bowed to Death Wolf and stated, I thank you for the gifts Kamudasur Dono and vow to use them as best I can. The ancient wolf nodded her head as she returned to her seat in the semicircle, while saying, may the spirits of the past guide you along your chosen path, young Hefathra Hisu. After she had returned to her spot Winter Wolf stepped forward and stated, you have passed each of our tests and kind you pup, and now for our final gift we bequeath to you. What if Naruto was trained by Wolf Clan? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.